Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Blood sacrifice to millions of zombies. I will be a demon cultivator in the apocalypse. Chapter 61. The news from the caravan this time was that the flesh gourd being auctioned off only had material that was several decades old. Even if it were placed in the Violet Palace or Gold Core stage, it would only be worth a passing glance for a foundation building stage cultivator. But if it were placed in the chi refining stage and cultivated for hundreds of years, it would be considered a decent magic tool. However, this also presented an opportunity for Zheng Yi. Otherwise, if it were truly a treasure that could catch the attention of a foundation building stage cultivator in the Violet Palace stage, Zheng Yi wouldn't even bother to take a look, let alone plan for it. It would be like an ignorant child causing a commotion in the marketplace, trying to snatch treasures without the corresponding strength and cultivation level. That would be like courting disaster. Moreover, Zheng Yi had made up his mind. He mainly wanted to use the flesh and blood of the zombies from the Doomsday World to cultivate the flesh gourd. The more flesh and blood the flesh gourd consumed, the faster its material would upgrade. It could completely break through the limitations of its lifespan and be cultivated into 100, 1,000, or even 10,000-year-old flesh gourd. Although this was difficult for demonic cultivators in the Great Yi Immortal Domain, it wasn't very challenging for Zheng Yi, who possessed an endless supply of zombies from the Doomsday World. What was even more important was that Zheng Yi could use the golden light of merit to cleanse all the resentment and karma, refining the blood and flesh magic sword he cultivated. He could use the golden light of merit to transform this sinister and vengeful law weapon into a spirit communication law weapon. Then, wouldn't he have the law treasure sword embryo needed for the 5-element sword foundation building technique? As a flesh and blood magic tool, it had the innate characteristic of bloodthirstiness and being easily rebellious. However, with the seed of merit sitting in his consciousness sea and the cleansing of the golden light of merit, this blood and flesh magic sword wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. Therefore, Zheng Yi was determined to obtain these flesh gourd seeds. He ordered the caravan to continue gathering information and, once everything was confirmed, they would set off for the City of Shadows. The reason why the cultivation of the gourd was called apex-level spiritual material was because it could absorb various materials, ores, and even self-cultivate flying swords without the need for forging. This was different from law weapons forged by refiners themselves. Both had their advantages and disadvantages, but they were definitely naturally nurtured. In simple terms, various ore materials were absorbed into the gourd, and when the gourd matured, the flying sword could be directly taken out by breaking open the gourd. As a variant of the gourd, the flesh gourd naturally inherited the characteristics of the gourd. It absorbed various ore materials and cultivated demonic flying swords through the cultivation of flesh and blood. In order to save time and because it was a busy period, Zheng Yi didn't want to attract attention. So he acted in secret, without bringing any followers, and didn't even announce it publicly. He claimed to be in seclusion, quietly leaving and setting off alone. The City of Shadows was only over 200 miles away from the Qi family. With Zheng Yi's speed and agility, he could reach his destination in about a day's journey. Compared to the Blood Mist Abyss, which was guarded by a Violet Palace stage cultivator at the apex level, the City of Shadows was just a small city controlled by 3 foundation building stage demonic sects. There was a foundation building stage expert who had long-term residence in the city. Rushing all the way, Zheng Yi asked the person in charge of the caravan stationed in the City of Shadows a few questions, clarifying the time and location of the auction. Then, under the arrangements of his subordinates, he rested for a day. As night fell, after recuperating, Zheng Yi left the camp and headed to the auction. After crossing several streets, Zheng Yi arrived at the entrance of a hidden gate. Zheng Yi changed into a black robe and wore a bamboo hat on his head, concealing his figure. Immediately, he took out a token and stuck it on the formation at the gate. The token was instantly swallowed, and then there was a series of clicking sounds. The gate opened. Zheng Yi walked in sideways, and the gate closed immediately. This was not a regular auction house, but an underground auction house similar to a black market. Things that were not easy to sell or had irregular origins would usually be sold here. Entering through the gate, the lights inside brightened, revealing a lively scene. It was a 3-story building, and many people had already gathered inside. Many of them were dressed like Zheng Yi, all wearing black robes as a disguise. There were many people gathered on the ground floor, but it was unusually quiet. No one spoke, only a chilling and gloomy aura condensed in the air, circulating with a cold breath, as if it wanted to freeze the entire space. Looking up, there seemed to be many private rooms on the second floor, seemingly occupied by people of higher status than those in the main hall on the first floor. Zheng Yi didn't mind at all. He just found a corner and waited quietly. After about half an hour, it seemed that everyone who should have arrived had arrived. The open gate was completely closed, and a figure walked out onto the protruding platform on the second floor. The person was not tall, with a round figure and a simple smile on his face, looking harmless, like a chubby shopkeeper. The chubby shopkeeper came out, clasping his hands together, and said, "Esteemed guests, fellow Taoists, welcome to this auction. Without further ado, let's begin with the first item." As the auction proceeded, Zheng Yi's horizons were greatly expanded by the various items being auctioned. There were various items such as corpses, bones, souls, bloodlines, and so on, all from the bodies of cultivators, being sold here. It proved the cruelty and all-encompassing nature of the struggles among cultivators in the demonic cultivation world. In addition, Zheng Yi also noticed some auction items that seemed to come from disciples of certain demonic cultivation sects, and some even had exclusive branding and sect marks. These should all be things obtained after killing people, and they were being auctioned off. It had to be admitted that demonic cultivators acted recklessly. However, Zheng Yi had no thoughts about this and just waited quietly. The next item is the blood flesh gourd seed, which can cultivate an apex-level demonic sword. The chubby shopkeeper shouted passionately, hoping to attract more attention and increase the price of the item. However, before he could finish speaking, it was met with a wave of ridicule. The blood flesh gourd is good, but it would be better if there were finished products. But just a mere blood flesh gourd seed, cultivating a 100-year blood flesh gourd would require at least the corpses of the mortals in a city, as well as a large amount of cultivator flesh and blood. Do you provide the materials? This thing seems good on the surface, with a grand name, claiming to be a mutated form of the sword gourd. But in reality, it's just a mediocre item. Do I have so many materials to cultivate a blood flesh gourd? Isn't it better to improve my own strength? Don't exaggerate. We're not fools here. Just announce the auction directly. Faced with the ridicule from the crowd, the chubby shopkeeper didn't care at all. He just quickened his pace and announced the start of the auction. 300 low-grade spirit stones. 500 low-grade spirit stones. The price of spirit stones continues to rise. Although it is very difficult to cultivate a mature flesh gourd, for ordinary chi refining stage demonic cultivators, if this flesh gourd seed is cultivated well, it is indeed a good treasure. Even if one cannot use it themselves, it can be cultivated slowly as a heritage for their family or sect. If this generation cannot use it, it can be left for the next generation. Compared to previous items, there is much fiercer competition for this flesh gourd seed. However, although everyone has made bids, the enthusiasm for raising the price is not very high. As the price of spirit stones surpasses 3,000, the voices for raising the price become scarce. Only 3 people are still raising the price on the field, but each time they only raise it by 100. One of them is Zheng Yi. He joined the bidding process from the beginning and did not wait until the last moment to raise the price dramatically. For him, such an act would be too ostentatious. 3,100, 3,200, 3,500. As Zheng Yi raised the price to 3,500 low-grade spirit stones, he displayed an air of certainty, causing the other 2 to shake their heads and give up directly. In fact, for everyone, this flesh gourd seed is not a necessary treasure. If they can obtain something better, it is not a loss if they cannot get it. After all, cultivating this flesh gourd is too troublesome, requiring sufficient flesh and blood cultivation. Whether it is mortals or cultivators, the consequences of wanton slaughter in the Dia immortal domain have been proven. The result is either being punished by heaven or being hunted down, with no good outcome. With 3,500 low-grade spirit stones, Zheng Yi successfully obtained the flesh gourd seed, and he felt satisfied. He relaxed and waited for the auction to end before leaving. Suddenly, Zheng Yi felt a slight tremor from the merit seed in his sea of consciousness, and he immediately felt a chill down his spine. The power of merit is extremely mysterious. For him, he has already discovered 2 different effects. The first is to eliminate the power of karma and resentment, resolving malevolent energy. The second is an exceptionally keen sense of danger. This has been confirmed long ago and will not have the slightest error. Therefore, someone must have a great deal of malice towards him now. A sense of alertness surged in his heart, and he quickly looked up, trying to find out who was coveting him. Unfortunately, the other party was also quite vigilant. With just one glance, they withdrew their gaze. Zheng Yi only knew that the malicious gaze came from above the second floor, but as for who exactly it was, he couldn't find the culprit. He couldn't find out who it was at all. Who is it? I don't know anyone in Yuzhong City, nor do I have any grudges with anyone. Who is thinking about me? Under Zheng Yi's calm expression, he regained his composure, but his mind was racing. He was also puzzled. He didn't know anyone in this unfamiliar Yuzhong City. He had only been here for a day and hadn't had a chance to interact with anyone, let alone make enemies. Could it be trouble caused by the flesh-gored seed? Unfortunately, my cultivation level is too low and my spiritual consciousness is too weak. Otherwise, I would definitely be able to discover who the owner of that gaze is. Zheng Yi's cultivation in demonic arts is still short, only at the 5th level of qi refining, and the range of his spiritual consciousness is too limited. He couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency in his heart. The demon realm is too dangerous, and many people in the demonic path are lunatics. He doesn't know where their intense malice comes from. Just staying in a small town for a while, there were already people secretly observing his presence. In order to safely survive in the demonic path, one must have stronger power and a higher cultivation level. Zheng Yi secretly made up his mind that he wouldn't easily leave his current location until his strength reached a higher level of qi refining. On the 2nd floor, in a private room on the west side, stood 3 middle-aged men, while a young man sat on a chair. Among them, a middle-aged man with dark skin was quietly asking the young man in charge, "Young Master Yuan, what's so special about this person that you are so concerned about?" Just now, this person glanced at Zheng Yi from the 2nd floor, but he didn't expect Zheng Yi's perception to be so astonishing and his vigilance so high. He instantly reacted and even traced the gaze back. Fortunately, his cultivation level was slightly higher, and he was in the private room on the 2nd floor, so he quickly withdrew his gaze and wasn't discovered. Young Master Yuan had just told him to keep an eye on this person and not lose track of him. Because he has a deep blood feud with my Qi family, the young man suddenly stood up, his eyes filled with anger and malice, staring down below. Zheng Yi didn't notice this because the private room was protected by isolation formation. This person's name was Qi Shengyuan, the eldest son of the Qi family's main branch, belonging to the hidden branch of the Qi family. In the past, the Qi family had made a great plan and understood deeply that from the day their ancestral patriarch risked his life to set up the 9 yin gathering evil pulse formation, their entire family had embarked on an irreversible path. Either they would succeed, spending 2 generations, time to establish the foundation of a 500-year foundation building stage cultivation family. Or if things were exposed, they would have achieved nothing and their whole family would fall into the myriad tribulations, never to return. Once discovered, the Qi family would undoubtedly be wiped out by the assimilating soul sect. So how could a cunning family like the Qi family not have backup plans? Therefore, in order to preserve the continuation of the family bloodline, the Qi family split off a legitimate branch, changed their names, and used demonic arts to conceal the bloodline connection of the family. They placed this legitimate branch in the remote city of Yuzhong. The eldest son of the current family head, Qi Yuanzong, was declared dead in his childhood, but he was actually secretly sent to Yuzhong City. He was cultivated as the head of the hidden branch. Only a few high-level members of the main branch of the family knew about this, and others had no idea that there was a hidden branch of the Qi family in Yuzhong City. This method of escaping danger can be described as a brilliant strategy, a 100-year plan secretly arranged by the main branch of the Qi family. It can be said that in addition to continuing to set up formations and cultivate blood infant ghost babies, the Qi family's biggest expenditure over the years has been invested in this hidden branch. Furthermore, in order to maintain contact and prevent unexpected situations, Qi Yuanzong and his legitimate eldest son set up a soul connection technique since childhood. When they are within a 10-mile radius of each other, they can sense each other. And if one of them dies or is controlled, the other person can also sense the identity of the enemy through the soul connection. This is also the main reason why Qi Shengyuan was able to discover Zheng Yi. As soon as he entered the venue, Qi Shengyuan sensed the aura of blood feud on Zheng Yi. In order to avoid any mistakes, he tried to activate the soul connection, and it was indeed true. Half a month ago, Qi Shengyuan received news that the main branch of the Qi family had suffered a catastrophic disaster, wiped out by the new members of the assimilating soul sect. The charges were said to be deceiving the sect and secretly embezzling a large amount of resources, as well as supporting the rise of the Qi family's hidden branch. This matter made Qi Shengyuan so angry that he almost vomited blood. He still had some vigilance in his heart, afraid that this was a bait set by the assimilating soul sect to catch all the fish that had escaped their net. But on the other hand, Qi Shengyuan also had a glimmer of hope. If there were no rumors spreading, it meant that the meticulous arrangement that the Qi family had been working on for hundreds of years in the depths of the mine had not been exposed. As long as he didn't die and regained control of the arrangement inside the Juin Gathering Evil Vein formation, the Qi family would not be completely depleted. There was still hope for a counterattack and a resurgence. But no matter what, Zheng Yi, the mastermind behind all this, must die. Because on the day of the battle in the mine, after killing Qi Yuanzong and the other two, Zheng Yi took control of the entire situation. In order to prevent his own information from leaking, he deliberately used the demonic technique of erasing the memories of all mortals during that time. It would cause them a headache for a few days, but it wouldn't cost them their lives. However, it would save them the trouble of Zheng Yi's strength information leaking. On the other hand, in order to completely control the entire Qi family, after Qi Lin took power, he carried out a thorough cleansing of the main vein. The bloody and cruel struggles during that time were needless to say, but it also provided a better cover for Zheng Yi. It made outsiders think that it was some people from the assimilating soul sect who wanted to attack the main vein of the Qi family, rather than a new inner disciple like Zheng Yi at the 4th level of Qi refining. Because this was really unreasonable. So this also led to misunderstandings and misjudgments about Zheng Yi's strength from those who had ulterior motives. Qi Shengyuan was the same. Originally, he was preparing to accumulate strength and seize the opportunity to kill this enemy. But unexpectedly, he encountered him in the underground auction house in Yuzhong City. It was truly a heaven-sent opportunity. In his eyes, Zheng Yi was already a dead man. And he must be humiliated in every possible way, enduring hardships and suffering, in order to dissipate the deep hatred in his heart. What? He is the mastermind behind the destruction of my Qi family, that disciple of the assimilating soul sect. After hearing this, the middle-aged man with a dark complexion also became furious, his eyes filled with anger as he shouted, "This is an extremely rare opportunity. We must not let him go. After the auction is over, go and investigate if there are any accompanying personnel." Qi Shengyuan took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart, and said, "The most important thing now is to obtain the item from the auction." The news of the Juin Gathering Evil Vein formation has not been transmitted, which proves that the biggest secret of our Qi family's main vein has not been exposed. We still have hope of turning the tables. For these years, we have collected all the materials for the 5 poison slashing spirit sword, only lacking the final essence of the 5 elements. Once the sword formation is forged and the ancestral arrangement under the Juin Gathering Evil Vein formation is taken out, what can the assimilating soul sect do to us? Even if we are not currently a match for them, we can retreat calmly and come back in a few decades to settle this deep-seated hatred. Yes, after taking a deep look at Zheng Yi, he restrained his aura and nodded fiercely. Fortunately, the private room had soundproofing, so no one outside knew what was happening inside, and the auction continued. The next item is one of the 3 most valuable treasures in this auction. It is the apex level material for forging the law weapon, the essence of Zheng metal. A fist-sized golden ore was placed on a velvet tray and raised up, immediately causing exclamations from the audience. Even Zheng Yi couldn't help but concentrate his attention and look at the ore on the stage, showing a few traces of surprise. The essence of Zheng metal is known as one of the sharpest minerals below the foundation building stage. This kind of refining material, even a cultivator at the foundation building stage cannot remain indifferent. I didn't expect to see it at this auction. This refined essence of Zhengjin is one of the most durable raw ores for cultivators below the foundation building stage. It belongs to the top-grade material for refining flying swords. If some refined essence of Genjin can be added to a flying sword, the sharpness of an ordinary flying sword will increase by at least 30%. With such a large piece of refined essence of Genjin, it can at least be refined into a flying sword, entirely made of refined essence of Genjin, and its power will reach an extremely terrifying level. If one possesses a flying sword with refined essence of Genjin, it can directly increase the combat power of an ordinary chi refining stage cultivator by several tens of %. Even in the flying swords used by cultivators at the foundation building stage, only a small amount of this material is usually added. Zheng Yi has only heard of this precious material before, and seeing it in person is the first time. A desire to obtain it surged in his heart. However, he shook his head and dismissed this unrealistic idea. Not to mention the extremely high value of this piece of refined essence of Genjin, his own supply of spiritual stones is simply not enough. Even if he were to obtain this supreme grade refining material, being unfamiliar with this city, he would easily become a target for others. Obtaining the treasure is easy, but taking it away requires another set of skills. Everyone, not only Zheng Yi, but all the demonic cultivators present couldn't help but feel a sense of greed. It must be said that refined essence of Genjin is extremely precious and can be considered a rare treasure. In the dim underground auction house, invisible auras surged, interweaving and colliding with each other, forming angles like invisible pythons. But in the next second, a sudden dry cough came from the fat shopkeeper on the stage, who had previously been smiling and amiable. It sounded like thunder in the ears, and instantly a cold air rose from the soles of the feet to the brow. The greedy flames surging in the heart were extinguished directly. A terrifying aura rose from the fat shopkeeper on the stage. On the surface, he appeared gentle and harmless, but he was actually a chi refining high-level cultivator, at least at the 7th or 8th level of chi refining. Such strength is definitely considered a master among independent cultivators. Although there were many demonic cultivators in the field, under the pressure of this terrifying aura, many of them were scared and unconsciously restrained their own aura. One person suppressing the entire scene. Such majesty represents not only himself, but also the forces behind him. Being able to hold an underground auction in the city of Yuzhong is not something an ordinary person can do. They must have some influence. They are definitely formidable forces, otherwise this auction would not be able to take place. Alright, the auction will continue. I invite all the bidders to make their offers. 5,000, 6,000, quote. This auction of refined essence of Genjin is much more intense than the previous auction of the blood flesh calabash seed. Almost all the VIP rooms on the second floor have made their bids. The price, starting from 1,000 spiritual stones, kept rising and quickly reached 30,000 low-grade spiritual stones. This price made Zheng Yi, who had originally wanted to try and compete, completely give up. Although Zheng Yi had accumulated a small fortune by selling spirit essence stones through the Qi family caravan these days, he could only come up with a few thousand spiritual stones. As for 30,000 spiritual stones, he could only think about it. Watching the increasingly frenzied scene, under the influence of this fanatic atmosphere, everyone started raising their bids crazily, and Zheng Yi gave up on the idea. In this situation, it's better to stay out of it. Otherwise, it would be more dangerous to take something and not be able to bring it along. The situation in the field became more intense, and in the end, the essence of Genjin was sold for 37,600 low-grade spirit stones, which was taken by a buyer on the second floor. After the auction ended, Zheng Yi did not linger any longer, but left Yuzhong City directly and hurried on the road in the dark. Because in the venue, he felt a malicious gaze, although he didn't know who it came from, it was definitely directed at him with ill intentions, which caused the vibration of the seed of merit. Zheng Yi expected that there would be waves, so he had to be cautious in his actions. He hastened his pace and arrived at a dilapidated temple late at night. Zheng Yi stopped and took a moment to recover his body. The temple was not big, with a faded statue of an unknown mountain god inside. Zheng Yi found a clean place and swept it with a dust avoidance talisman. Then he sat cross-legged in that spot, holding a spirit stone in each hand, quickly restoring the spiritual luck in his body. After about half an hour, there was a rustling sound in the dark night. It seemed like a group of bats hunting in the night, flapping their wings and flying towards the dilapidated temple. A dark figure appeared on a high ground not far away, commanding the blood bats like a large net, surrounding the entire temple. Suck the blood and flesh of the people inside. As soon as the dark figure gave the order, the flying blood bats flapped their wings and rushed into the temple, attacking the cultivators inside. Boom! Before the blood bats could enter the temple, a figure suddenly rushed out, emitting a blue flame all over his body, exuding a bone-chilling cold light in the dark night, and met the overwhelming blood bats head-on. Squeak! Amidst the screams of imminent death, the ground was covered with the bodies of blood bats, almost burying the dilapidated temple. However, Zheng Yi, who had rushed out of the temple, did not stop his movements. Instead, he threw out clusters of ghostly fire, smashing into the dense swarm of blood bats. Wherever they went, countless blood bats were ignited, and masses of blood bats fell, covering the ground. Ah, my blood bats! The whole process was extremely fast, from rushing out of the temple to bombarding the swarm of blood bats, almost in a very short period of time, half of the overwhelming blood bats were killed. The cultivator who controlled the blood bats had an incredulous expression on his face, and his gaze towards Zheng Yi was almost burning with anger. These blood bats were not ordinary bats, but descendants bred by the blood bat old demon, a powerful cultivator in the demonic path, widely spread in the demon realm. Especially the secret method of cultivating blood bats, which is widely circulated among cultivators. Almost every city has cultivators who are proficient in refining blood bats. When Zheng Yi was traveling from Zonkong City to the demon realm, he had witnessed a battle between two foundation building stage cultivators. One of them used the six-tailed blood pupil demon banner, while the other foundation building cultivator controlled a swarm of black bats. That battle left a deep impression on Zheng Yi. Blood bats can evolve to higher levels by killing the flesh and souls of plundering cultivators. Moreover, since blood bats have already signed a contract with cultivators, they generally will not betray them. If a cultivator can cultivate a group of powerful blood bats, they would be a master at the foundation building stage and would dare to besiege others. Of course, this is only theoretically possible. Generally speaking, cultivating blood bats requires a substantial amount of resources, which only foundation building stage cultivators have the energy for. Ordinary cultivators simply cannot achieve this. Furthermore, there is a fatal flaw in cultivating blood bats. When facing an old blood bat demon, due to bloodline suppression, these blood bats will definitely betray their owners. Even with a contract, they cannot be suppressed. This is because these blood bats have a pyramid-shaped bloodline system, and the ancestor standing at the top of the pyramid has control and suppression rights over all descendants. The ancestor blood bat of the blood bat demon happens to be the source of all blood bats in this demon realm. This is also why the cultivation secret technique of the blood bat palace is widely spread. The blood bat demon doesn't care about independent cultivators cultivating blood bats outside. They even encourage it. Independent cultivators who cultivate blood bats may even have the opportunity to join the blood bat palace. In any case, no matter how they are cultivated, it is impossible to surpass the bloodline origin of the ancestor blood bat, and there is even a greater possibility of becoming a wedding dress for the blood bat demon. The more blood bat groups are cultivated, the stronger the bloodline connection with the ancestor blood bat becomes. This is a blatant conspiracy. The competition among demonic independent cultivators is fierce, and there will always be someone unable to resist the temptation. There have been such situations in the past, where cultivators who controlled blood bats besieged the disciples of the blood bat demon, but ended up being controlled by the blood bats themselves and became the ones whose flesh and blood were sucked dry. Although there are hidden dangers, because cultivating blood bats is relatively easy and does not require too many precious treasures, only flesh and blood are needed for cultivation, many demonic cultivators still use blood bats as a means of auxiliary attack. Unfortunately, this time they encountered an opponent. Zheng Yi's Qing Zan Sha, cultivated through the He Sha Gong, is enough to cause fatal damage to these low-level blood bats. You go to hell. This time, the person who came was ruthless. He directly activated his technique, and a huge blood-colored bat appeared behind him. With wings the size of a room, a pair of blood-colored eyes the size of light bulbs stared ferociously at Zheng Yi. The wings were adorned with sharp black hooks, emitting a chilling coldness in the dark night. Suck him dry. With a command, the giant blood bat descended like a shadow, moving at an extremely fast speed, pouncing towards Zheng Yi. Blood rogue, go and play with it. As soon as the words fell, the soul-capturing banner in Zheng Yi's hand trembled slightly, and a female ghost enveloped in a blood robe appeared in midair, blocking the blood bat's path, colliding with it. It can be seen that this blood bat should be the true contracted beast of the other party, at least at the chi refining 7th level, one level higher than the black-clothed person himself. Coincidentally, the main soul of the soul-capturing banner, the blood robe woman, is currently breaking through to the peak of the 7th level, and she happens to lack an opponent. Now she can use the blood bat to practice. Although blood bats are terrifying and extremely fast, they are still insignificant compared to supreme-grade ghosts like the blood robe. The blood robe woman appeared beside the blood bat's wings, and with a forceful pull, she directly tore a large hole, causing the blood bat to lose balance and fall down. Following closely behind, the blood robe woman emitted a dense blood mist from her body, enveloping her in the blood bat that emitted sharp sonic attacks. After a moment of tearing, the blood mist dissipated, and the blood bat turned into a huge white skeleton, falling heavily to the ground, shattered into pieces. Its flesh and blood became the delicacy in the mouth of the blood robe woman, the main soul of the soul-capturing banner. You. Before the other person could speak, Zheng Yi waved the magic banner in his hand. In an instant, several powerful and ferocious ghosts with green faces and fangs pounced on the person, subduing them. Removing the mask, Zheng Yi discovered a completely unfamiliar face. Without hesitation, he asked directly, "Who are you? Why did you attack me?" "Give up. Don't even think about knowing anything," the person said firmly. "Tear him apart." Zheng Yi couldn't be bothered with idle talk. Since the other party refused to answer, there was no need for further conversation. He waved his hand, and several ghosts rushed forward. Amidst the screams, the black-clad person who attacked him was torn to pieces, with even their soul being pulled into the soul-capturing banner. The remnants of the Qi family. It turns out to be a survivor of the Qi family, Zheng Yi said with surprise after examining the information within the soul-capturing banner. He continued, "Truly a cunning and calculating family of heroes. They even have this trick up their sleeves. If they hadn't blocked my path, given a few more decades, they might have risen and even replaced the assimilating soul sect." While Zheng Yi was contemplating what to do next, suddenly, one of the ghosts he had sent out to search within a radius of dozens of miles reported back with a message. They had discovered someone secretly monitoring them, 20 miles away in the southeast direction. Another member of the Qi family. "I'll have to take a good look." Zheng Yi sneered, putting away the rest of the ghosts and only bringing the main soul of the soul-capturing banner and the blood-clothed woman as he chased after the direction of the feedback. As soon as the middle-aged man died, sensing something amiss, Qi Shengyuan immediately became aware of it. As a Qi refining stage cultivator, his innate sixth sense was extremely keen. Qi Shengyuan had been carefully cultivated since childhood and was the heir of the Qi family's hidden lineage. He was quite decisive in his actions. He quickly ordered the other two followers to investigate while he hurriedly headed towards the city of Yuzhong after they left. However, before he could escape far, he was blocked by a figure. "Fellow Taoist, why are you blocking my way?" Qi Shengyuan looked at the figure in midair with a vigilant expression. A flying sword rose into the air, floating with a cold light emanating from its tip, pointing towards the Taoist figure. "Didn't you come looking for me?" The figure sneered, and moonlight shone through the dark clouds, illuminating his face. He removed the illusionary disguise, revealing a clear face. "It's you." Qi Shengyuan's pupils suddenly contracted. His heart sank, and he couldn't help but say, "The deceased eldest son of the Qi family, right? I didn't expect Qi Yuanzong to be so cunning. He even arranged a blood relative in the hidden lineage," Zheng Yi said with a dark expression as he looked at Qi Shengyuan, who bore some resemblance to Qi Yuanzong. "Cutting grass without removing the roots, it will grow again with the spring breeze. When striking a snake, aim for its 7-inch spot, otherwise you will suffer harm. The ancients never deceive me. It seems that the lingering souls of the Qi family can finally be completely eliminated this time, eradicating hidden dangers. Talking too much is useless, let actions speak for themselves." Upon hearing this, Qi Shengyuan realized that further explanations were useless. Powerful spiritual energy burst forth, and the flying sword transformed into a residual image, emitting sharp sword energy as it suddenly shot towards Zheng Yi. "You are too impatient, not planning before acting, that is the true reason for your defeat today." Zheng Yi uttered a cold shout, and with a tap of his right hand in the air, the soul-capturing banner spun around and released surging black mist. A mournful ghost howl, and the blood-red malevolent aura suddenly converged, shrinking in midair to form the terrifying appearance of a blood-clothed female ghost. She saw Qi Shengyuan standing opposite her, and her bloodthirsty aura suddenly expanded, drawing a red whip in midair and pouncing towards him. Facing the oncoming flying sword, the red-clothed female ghost's claws turned into illusions, creating a series of claw marks in the air. The terrifying attack clawed at the flying sword from all directions like a storm of wind and thunder. As the main soul of the soul-capturing banner, after countless refinements and nourishment from Zheng Yi's soul power, the strength of the blood-clothed female ghost had long surpassed its previous state. With ghostly and ethereal transformations, a formidable spirit body, even facing a chi-refining 6th-layer cultivator, she was in a dominant position. Finish it quickly. Although the blood-clothed female ghost had gained some intelligence, her nature as a fierce ghost still carried a cruel and bloodthirsty instinct. With the power she unleashed, she could easily overpower Qi Shengyuan. However, she was not willing to end the opponent's life so easily. Instead, she seemed to be ready to play with him like a cat playing with a mouse. Unfortunately, at this moment, an impatient urging voice sounded in her ears. This place was not far from the city of Yuzhong, especially at night when everything was quiet. The fluctuations of the battle would be more noticeable, and if it attracted more independent cultivators or cultivators looking for easy gains, it would be troublesome. Therefore, Zheng Yi decided to quickly end the battle. Faced with the urging of Zheng Yi, the master of the soul-capturing banner, the blood-clothed female ghost dared not delay. After being repaired by Zheng Yi several times, she had long been afraid of this master to the core and dared not disobey his orders. She let out a sharp scream, and her hands transformed into blood red, with sharp nails growing on her fair and tender fingers. Against the backdrop of the blood-red color, they appeared eerie and dangerous. The blood-clothed female ghost erupted with all her strength, moving at a speed that was beyond the naked eye's perception. Suddenly, the sound of ghost howls filled the scene, with endless red illusions continuously appearing. In an instant, the entire scene was filled with red figures, all attacking Qi Shengyuan, who stood in the center. In a trance, it seemed as if the positions had shifted, with countless ghosts roaming freely. This level of attack was completely beyond the ability of Qi Shengyuan, a chi-refining 6th-layer cultivator, to resist. In just a few breaths, deep claw marks were left on his body and face. You forced me. In order to support the development of the hidden veins and leave a backup for his family, the main branch of the Qi family had invested a large amount of resources into Qi Shengyuan. His talent was also outstanding, allowing him to reach the chi-refining 6th layer at such a young age. Especially the cultivation technique he practiced, the Crimson Bone Blood Incineration technique, contained a secret demonic art called Crimson Blood Incineration. With this secret art as a last resort, Qi Shengyuan could instantly burn 70% of his essence blood, squeezing out his potential and rapidly increasing his strength by twofold in a short period of time. Although the subsequent side effects were severe, in a life or death situation like this, there was no time to consider so much. Ah! Qi Shengyuan roared, and his whole body was enveloped in crimson flames. Instantly, his face turned pale, but his momentum rapidly soared, directly reaching the Qi-refining 7th layer, the level of high-level Qi. Reluctantly resorting to forbidden techniques, Qi Shengyuan, even if he can leave this time, will be unable to break through the 7th level of Qi refining for a long time. It will take at least 3 years to heal his injuries. Moreover, this will greatly diminish his potential. For cultivators, time is precious. Being slow in progress can disrupt one's entire promotion system, especially when Qi Shengyuan is currently in a period of power growth. This loss is enormous for a young cultivator with considerable talent. For a moment, the anger turned into a violent momentum. The sword aura of the flying sword doubled, carrying a sharp killing intent as it fiercely struck the blood-clothed female ghost. Boom! With a loud bang, the main soul of the soul-capturing banner was directly sent flying by the terrifying sword aura, and the blood-colored robe on her body was torn with cracks. The continuous sword aura covered the red-clothed female ghost, like surging waves, one after another, overwhelming and suppressing her completely. One loud bang after another, cracks appeared on the surface of the flying sword. The terrifying power almost exceeded the limit it could bear. Taking advantage of the duration of the demonic secret technique, Qi Shengyuan went all out without reservation. He was well aware that without killing or severely injuring this red-clothed female ghost, he had no hope of escaping. The blood-clothed female ghost lost the initiative under the continuous and terrifying sword attacks. For a while, the red aura around her was completely torn apart, and she was at a complete disadvantage. Ghost is still a ghost, even if its spiritual wisdom is greatly opened, its combat wisdom and experience are still inferior to true cultivators. Seeing Qi Shengyuan suddenly unleash his full power, Zheng Yi was not worried. However, if this continued, the fluctuations of the battle would continue to spread, eventually attracting those with ill intentions. The side of the ghost city would definitely react, and things would not be easy to handle then. Zheng Yi pointed with his right hand, and a group of green and mysterious aura instantly enveloped the main soul of the soul-capturing banner and the blood-clothed female ghost from bottom to top, like a whirlwind. The female ghost let out a sharp roar, and her body suddenly swelled. Her original height of about 1.7 meters rapidly grew to about 3 meters. The red aura surged out like rolling waves, and her aura, which had been suppressed at the 7th level of Qi refining, suddenly soared to the 8th level of Qi refining. Her ferocious nature as a fierce ghost, which had been suppressed all along, was completely aroused. The blood-clothed female ghost's body twisted like a spirit snake, and her spirit body was completely composed of red aura, with her aura skyrocketing. A pair of slender white jade hands, like sharp and translucent flying swords, were completely unafraid of colliding with law weapons. The swollen hands turned into 2 huge claws, instantly seizing the flying sword. Boom! With an explosion, the flying sword was firmly grasped by the blood-clothed female ghost's swollen hands. Then, a group of green and mysterious demonic fire suddenly burned fiercely, covering the blade of the flying sword, erasing inch by inch his divine sense and spiritual imprint. The flying sword was connected to Qi Shengyuan's aura and spiritual consciousness. His body trembled involuntarily, his face instantly pale as paper, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could react, the reflection of the blood-clothed female ghost's figure was already seen in his widened eyes. Immediately, he didn't even have a chance to scream. His entire body was torn apart into pieces under the countless claw shadows in the sky, turning into a mist of blood that filled the air. Even his divine soul was swallowed by the blood-clothed female ghost. Of course, this was done with Zheng Yi's consent. Then, the blood-clothed female ghost respectfully flew over and handed a storage bag to Zheng Yi. Immediately after, the blood-clothed female ghost flew into the soul-capturing banner on Zheng Yi's palm. After devouring the divine soul of Qi Shengyuan, a cultivator at the 6th level of Qi refining, when she appeared again, she would probably already be a fierce ghost at the 8th level of Qi refining. There are really a lot of cultivators who want to challenge Autumn Wind. Just as Zheng Yi put away his storage bag and looked up, he saw several auras rapidly rising in the distance. The closest one could be reached in just a dozen breaths. Fortunately, he had already dealt with Qi Shengyuan. Zheng Yi cursed inwardly, his figure moved, disappearing without a trace into the darkness below in an instant. Not long gone. Before long, an old figure appeared in the area where Zheng Yi and Qi Shengyuan had fought just now. He lightly cast a spell to investigate. The old man opened his eyes and sensed the residual information on this land, extracting many useful clues from it. Both sides were Qi refining high-level cultivators, one died, and the other left. After sensing the aura for a moment, the old man said softly. This person's aura was stable. Standing there, he seemed calm and relaxed on the surface, but in reality, he was like a volcano gathering power, ready to erupt with terrifying force at any moment. He was one of the foundation building stage experts who guarded the city of Yuzhong. He usually stayed in Yuzhong City and would not take action unless there was a threat to the city. There have been more conflicts in the surrounding area recently, and Yuzhong City has become less stable. Before his words fell, his figure was like a shooting star, flying straight towards Yuzhong City, leaving only his voice lingering in the air. ... To cut the grass, one must remove the roots. Zheng Yi deeply understood this. Thieves can last 1,000 days, but there is no defense against them for 1,000 days. When acting in the demon realm, Zheng Yi has always been cautious, ensuring that any small hidden dangers are eliminated at the source. Out of the 4 people who were together with Qi Shengyuan this time, 2 had already died, and the other 2 should not be far away. Therefore, although Zheng Yi escaped from the original location, he did not actually go far, always using the concealment technique to travel. After circling around, he happened to intercept the 2 Qi family members who came back to investigate, and took care of them along the way. Now I can finally relax. Looking at the 2 who died under the siege of the Yin soldiers of the soul-capturing banner, Zheng Yi breathed a sigh of relief. There is no need to worry for the time being. He put away the storage bags of the 2 people, and then Zheng Yi continued on without stopping, returning directly to the mining area of Badong Town and going back to the place where he was cultivating in seclusion. Only after sitting in the secret room did he catch his breath. Although his whereabouts were secretive all the way during this operation, accidents still happened, and it was indeed dangerous. In just a dozen breaths at night, he would meet the foundation building stage cultivator guarding Yuzhong City. It definitely wouldn't be a good thing. However, this trip could be considered perfect. Not only did he obtain the blood gourd seed from the underground auction in Yuzhong City, but he also took the opportunity to resolve the hidden troubles of the Qi family, solving a big problem for him. Who would have thought that such a small Qi refining stage family would consider things so far ahead? Moreover, Qi Shengyuan's talent is not bad, and he is not far from reaching the high-level Qi refining stage. When the time comes for him to break through and cause trouble for Zheng Yi, the situation will definitely be even more dangerous than it is now. After all, it is easy to avoid an open attack, but it is difficult to guard against a hidden arrow. Only by resolving some of the dangers can everything be settled. Let me see what good things are in Qi Shengyuan's storage bag. After all, he is the heir of the Qi family's hidden lineage, so most of the good things should be on him. Zheng Yi felt a bit excited. The feeling of opening a blind box is completely different from buying resources with his own spirit stones. When he left, the blood-clothed female ghost handed him Qi Shengyuan's storage bag, which can be considered an extra gain this time. Qi Shengyuan is already dead, and even his soul has been devoured by the blood-clothed female ghost, so the imprint left on his storage bag has also become invalid. Zheng Yi used the Qingshan evil qi to directly erode the restriction and quickly opened the storage bag. There weren't many things inside, only some pills and jade slips. As for the spirit stones, there were only a few thousand, which Zheng Yi no longer found attractive. What's going on? Isn't the Qi family's hidden lineage supposed to be quite wealthy? Zheng Yi jokingly said, somewhat surprised. He also knew that over the years, besides cultivating the blood fetus ghost infants for the 9 yin gathering evil vein formation, the Qi family's main lineage should have supported the hidden lineage with many good things. However, it seems that Qi Shengyuan did not bring them with him. However, the appearance of an item in the next second surprised Zheng Yi, and his expression suddenly became extremely excited. So, the person who bought the essence of Zhengjin in the VIP seat on the 2nd floor of the underground auction house in Yuzhong City was actually Qi Shengyuan. That's right. After sorting out the things in the storage bag, the last item Zheng Yi discovered turned out to be the essence of Zhengjin, one of the 3 finale items at the auction. This is a good thing for refining a supreme-grade flying sword. At that time, in order to avoid attracting attention, Zheng Yi did not participate in the bidding, but he has always regretted it. Of course, the most important thing is that Zheng Yi didn't have money at that time, and he didn't have much spirit stones left after buying the blood flesh gourd seed at the auction. However, treasures find their way to those who are destined to have them. What Zheng Yi didn't expect was that the essence of Zhengjin had made a big circle and ended up in his hands again, which was quite surprising. Now Zheng Yi understood that Qi Shengyuan wasn't broke, but he had used all his spirit stones to buy the essence of Zhengjin. Now I have the main material for cultivating the blood flesh gourd supreme grade flying sword. After meditating quietly for a while and accumulating energy, Zheng Yi hurriedly came to the Doomsday World. The gathering place under Zheng Yi's control expanded its territory again, doubling its range. He even directly emptied a small city and moved the gathering place into it. With Zheng Yi's support behind the scenes, under Jin Wuxian's leadership, the population of the entire gathering place has reached more than 3,000, and they have subjugated several small gathering places nearby. Compared to when Zheng Yi first arrived, the scale, resources, and number of people in the gathering place have all grown rapidly. The escort team expanded rapidly, consisting of experienced soldiers and generals who have been through countless battles. Even the number of evolvers has reached 7 or 8, showing great development. However, these evolvers who came later have only heard rumors about Zhengyi and have not truly seen a perfected being. They are curious about Zhengyi, who is becoming more and more mysterious in the gathering place. Some even suspect that he was created for publicity purposes. Regarding this, Jin Wuxian did not explain too much. He is now purely Zheng Yi's lackey. Having witnessed Zheng Yi's power and mysteriousness, this fire-based Esper has become Zheng Yi's most loyal follower. After all, in this chaotic world, absolute strength represents absolute wealth and prosperity. Jin Wuxian. Just as Jin Wuxian was discussing with his subordinates about the next steps in their actions, a soft voice came into his ears. Although the voice was soft, it sounded like a muffled thunder in Jin Wuxian's ears. He stood up abruptly, his expression solemnly scanning the people present, and said, "The leader is back, follow along. The leader is back. That leader with unknown origins and mysteriousness. We, the newcomers who joined the gathering place, haven't seen him with our own eyes." In the core area of the gathering place, there were armed guards patrolling outside, and there were also hidden espers conducting surveillance. Under Jin Wuxian's lead, the newly joined espers entered an underground space together. Many of them were entering here for the first time and were curious about their surroundings. Of course, what they were even more curious about was the true mastermind behind the gathering place, who had been rumored to be extraordinary and even regarded as a savior and deity by many. In a vast space, on a high platform, a figure in a black robe, whose face couldn't be clearly seen, stood there with their back facing them. And at the center of the space, an invisible pressure seemed to fill every inch of the surroundings, forming a powerful force field. Although they couldn't see it, they could clearly sense it. Once a person stepped into it, they immediately felt as if they were a mosquito trapped in a spider's web, weak and powerless, as if sinking into a swamp, even breathing became somewhat difficult. The suffocating feeling made these new espers feel oppressed, their hearts sank, and their faces changed drastically. They were not ordinary people, their perception was extremely keen. They could clearly feel an extremely terrifying aura emanating from the mysterious figure in the black robe, suppressing everything around them. What was even more terrifying was that this invisible oppressive aura was not intentionally released by him, but more like an instinct. It was like an ancient dragon in slumber, but its instinctive breath was enough to make all living beings near it feel extremely oppressed. That surging power felt like a huge stone floating above their heads, pressing heavily on their hearts. A feeling of suffocation surged up. "Greetings, leader." Under Jin Wuxian's lead, his subordinates all bowed to the person in the black robe, who was enveloped in darkness from head to toe. This person is truly mysterious. But whether he really has the ability or is just pretending. After all, they hadn't personally witnessed Zheng Yi's actions or felt the invisible field spreading throughout the space, so the new espers had restrained their cynical attitude. But they still felt somewhat displeased with Zheng Yi's mysterious appearance, and some even slightly raised their heads to look at the figure. Zheng Yi completely ignored the change in these people's attitudes. He didn't care about what his subordinates thought, all he wanted was obedient dogs who would unquestioningly follow his orders. In an instant, as Zheng Yi uttered a faint whisper, a dark blue flame emerged from his body. The intense flames burned in the air, and the surroundings were so quiet that even the crackling sound of the burning air was extremely clear. Boom! In an instant, several newcomers who were secretly observing Zheng Yi almost simultaneously groaned, unprepared, their bodies bent, and they fell to the ground. Their bodies were bent and in extreme disarray, as if being held down by an invisible hand, forcefully pressed onto the ground. Even if these people desperately tried to activate their internal supernatural powers, their shoulders felt as heavy as 1,000 caddies, rendering them unable to move. Immediately, a chill ran through their hearts, and beads of sweat the size of soybeans seeped from their foreheads. Only the veteran members, who were prepared in advance, looked gleefully at the bewildered and frightened supernaturals, with a hint of schadenfreude on their faces. All 8 supernaturals from the gathering point have arrived. Do you have any new tasks? Please give your orders, sir. Seeing that the timing was about right, Jin Wuxian quickly stepped forward and spoke again, this time with a louder and more resounding voice. Zheng Yi gave them a small warning, using only a trace of his aura to directly crush these new supernaturals, leaving them without any resistance, lying on the ground in a sorry state like a few dogs. This not only demonstrated his strength but also taught these newcomers a lesson. If they were to take action, all the supernaturals present would be no match, making them abandon any thoughts of scheming. Jin Wuxian, I have a task for you. Under his black robe, Zheng Yi paid no attention to what the supernaturals present thought, and his gaze pierced through the robe as he issued his command directly. The gathering point needed a large-scale training. In addition to the necessary defensive forces, the remaining supernaturals were to lead the guard team to hunt and bring back zombies for their flesh and blood. Jin Wuxian did not hesitate and immediately led the guard team from the gathering point, setting off in a grand manner. Behind a row of heavy vehicles were empty trucks, with ordinary people responsible for carrying the corpses. It must be said that Jin Wuxian had quite the means of managing the gathering point. Tanks roared ahead, followed closely by armored vehicles and patrol cars. The raised gun barrels and muzzles made it clear that this was a militarily powerful escort force. With Zheng Yi's arrival, a large amount of resources were poured in, and the gathering point developed rapidly, greatly increasing its strength. The defensive forces had multiplied several times, and their combat power had reached a very high level. Previously, they relied on Zheng Yi himself to clear the surrounding towns of zombies and then sent people from the gathering point to scavenge for supplies. But now, the gathering point had developed its own strength, acquiring more resources. Ordinary people were now equipped with all kinds of firearms, with tanks, armored vehicles, and patrol cars in considerable numbers, enough to deal with attacks from the most powerful zombie groups in the vicinity. This was the current confidence of the gathering point. After being busy for so long, it was time for Zheng Yi to give back. He was also well aware that as his cultivation level increased, it was impossible for him to personally handle everything. Tasks such as collecting zombie flesh and blood and capturing fierce ghosts would ultimately have to be entrusted to ordinary people. As for how to improve their strength, Zheng Yi had already considered it, but it was not yet time to implement it. Now, the gathering point took the initiative to attack, hunting and killing more zombies to cultivate the blood and flesh gourds. About 2 hours later, trucks filled with zombie flesh and blood corpses returned to the gathering point, unloaded their cargo, and continued on their way. It was already late in the evening when all the zombie flesh and blood corpses brought back to the gathering point amounted to dozens of trucks. According to Zheng Yi's instructions, all these zombies were transported to the core area of the gathering point, to the zombie flesh and blood processing factory. This time, in another area not far away, he activated a small blood supply formation. This formation was invented for the purpose of rapidly cultivating some blood-sucking demon plants in the demonic path, just like the blood and flesh gourds. If left to grow at its own pace, it would be too slow. The blood supply formation collects a large amount of flesh and blood materials, providing the environment necessary for the rapid development and growth of demonic plants. Dozens of carts of zombie flesh and blood poured into the blood supply formation. On the key nodes of the formation, there were piles of zombie crystals, which began to glow and emit heat as the entire formation started, providing energy, causing the entire formation to start operating. Under the powerful force of the formation, the zombie flesh and blood in the formation were crushed like being ground between two huge millstones, turning into pools of blood that flowed along the formation and gathered in the central area, known as the flesh and blood gourd seed region. Cart after cart of zombie flesh and blood was added, and the originally shriveled flesh and blood gourd seed quickly became plump and round, dripping with fresh redness. Then, it took root and sprouted, growing vines that rapidly extended along the well-constructed iron frame, forming a dense forest of gourd vines at a visible speed. With dozens of carts of zombie flesh and blood poured into it, the flesh and blood gourd seed had already grown into a huge entity. The emerald green gourd vines stretched out huge leaves, which curled up like open mouths, devouring the zombie flesh and blood on the ground. At the same time, countless white roots extended from the ground, crazily absorbing the continuous supply of zombie flesh, blood, and water. This demonic plant, cultivated from the flesh and blood of the blood sect, grew vigorously and obtained abundant nutrition from the zombie flesh and blood. This was Zheng Yi's first time cultivating this kind of demonic plant. Looking at this bloodthirsty plant that seemed to possess both plant and animal characteristics, he couldn't help but have a big question mark in his mind. wondering if he could cultivate high-level flesh and blood gourds using this zombie flesh and blood. Were the sword embryos bred from it sufficiently perfect, sharp enough to successfully nurture? While I'm away, continue to replenish the zombie flesh and blood here. Zheng Yi called Jin Wuxian over and once again emphasized the basic requirements of the gathering place, then let everyone else leave first. The entire zombie flesh and blood area fell into silence once again, with only Zheng Yi standing there alone. At this moment, he took out precious ores from his storage bag. These were the materials Zheng Yi had recently collected for refining sword embryos. A large part of them came from the Kijia's treasury and trades with caravans. On the other hand, they also came from Qi Shengyuan's storage bag. From the metallic materials, it could be seen that this guy was also collecting materials for forging the 5 poison slashing spirit sword. But now, they were all accepted by Zheng Yi. Qi Shengyuan had been trying to break through to the 7th level of Qi refining in the past 2 years, preparing to refine an excellent flying sword as his life treasure. Unexpectedly, all of these materials ended up in Zheng Yi's hands. Zheng Yi even wanted to call him the treasure delivery boy. In fact, if you think about it, this sudden wealth was all thanks to the Kijia's gifts, which gave Zheng Yi the opportunity to obtain so many high-quality sword refining materials. Especially the essence of Zhengjin, a supreme-grade sword refining material, was an unexpected joy. Even cultivators at the foundation building stage would be somewhat envious. At this moment, after absorbing enough essence from the zombie flesh and blood, the flesh and blood gourd vine continued to grow and had already produced 7 or 8 small flesh and blood gourds. Each one had a unique texture and was not in the shape of an ordinary gourd. Each one looked like a red lantern, warm and emitting a faint red light. When touched, it felt like touching human skin, warm and elastic. Through the red glow, one could even see the dense blood vessels crawling inside the flesh and blood gourd. Although these flesh gourds are shaped like gourds, they are indeed flesh gourds, as if flesh and blood have grown on them. Zheng Yi had never seen flesh gourds with flesh and blood before, but this also aligns with the technical formula for cultivating flesh gourds that was given as a gift by the seller of the blood flesh gourd seeds at the auction. Zheng Yi didn't mind and directly took out the prepared blood iron, black obsidian steel ore, blood mother copper, and other materials. Including the most important essence of Zhengjin, he prepared 5 portions, each for 5 different flesh gourds. He made holes in them, placed the materials inside, and sealed them again with secret techniques. Before long, after absorbing enough zombie flesh and blood, these flesh gourds would heal themselves and repair the wounds. At this moment, a strong suction suddenly erupted from the gourd vines, pulling in more zombie flesh and blood towards the center of the formation. They were then absorbed by the gourd vines, supplying the 7 or 8 flesh gourds growing on them. Among them, the 5 gourds that Zheng Yi had activated with secret techniques were especially prominent. They quickly devoured the zombie flesh and blood, swaying unsteadily as they gradually repaired the wounds left behind. Zheng Yi's divine sense could even sense that inside these 5 flesh gourds, many metal ores began to melt and gradually merge together, forming a sharp edge within the flesh gourds, as if a flying sword was being nurtured within. In a short time, these metal ores inside the flesh gourds were left to wait after melting. As long as they continued to cultivate and provide abundant nutrients, the more zombie flesh and blood they absorbed, the better the growth of the flesh gourd vines and the higher the quality of the flesh gourds they produced. After reaching a certain age, the flesh gourds would mature completely and could bear fruit. In the end, within these flesh gourds, a flying sword embryo tempered with the essence of integrated union of refined metal ores was nurtured. The growth of the flesh gourds required a certain amount of time and the absorption of sufficient flesh and blood essence and integrated union metal essence. Only then would a qualified flying sword embryo be nurtured. Zheng Yi was not in a hurry. In this apocalyptic world, there was a shortage of everything except zombie flesh and blood. With enough zombie flesh and blood to support the growth of the flesh gourds, as long as he periodically fed them precious metal ores he collected, he could improve the quality of the flying sword embryos being nurtured. After spending 3 days confirming that the flesh gourds only needed to be cultivated further, Zheng Yi shifted his attention to the vampire bat eggs. These vampire bat eggs came from the black-clothed person who attacked him in the ruined temple, the subordinate of Qi Shengyuan. He cultivated a Qi refining 7th level vampire bat king the size of a room, capable of commanding countless vampire bats, making it extremely formidable. Unfortunately, he ultimately died under Zheng Yi's soul-capturing banner and had his spiritual energy and soul sucked dry by the main soul, the blood-clothed ghost. At that time, the situation was urgent, and Zheng Yi didn't have time to inspect his belongings. He just casually took them. Later, when he checked his storage bag, he unexpectedly found a spirit pet bag mixed in. Besides a large number of dead vampire bats, there was also a batch of vampire bat eggs. It seemed to be the supplies prepared by that black-clothed person, but they hadn't had a chance to hatch yet. In the Great Yi Immortal Domain, in this demon realm where they were located, the source of the blood bat swarm they cultivated was still with the blood bat old demon, the ancestor blood bat. The rumored ancestor of the Gold Core period, the blood bat, is the progenitor of all demon realm bats. This is the plan of the blood bat palace. Cultivating vampire bats can indeed quickly enhance their strength, but no matter what resources you use for cultivation, all the blood bats that are eventually cultivated are immediately controlled by the bloodline of the ancestor blood bat. This is also the reason why Zheng Yi brought the blood bat eggs to the Doomsday World to hatch. This is different from the Immortal Domain. No matter how powerful the blood bat demon is, and no matter how powerful the ancestor blood bat that is cultivated is, it is impossible to sense the batch of blood bats hatched in the Doomsday World. Zheng Yi still needs to thank the blood bat demon. After all, he selflessly spread the cultivation secret technique, making it easy for Zheng Yi to obtain it. In the past, those cultivators who hatched blood bats were serving the blood bat demon, but this time the roles have been reversed. The blood bat demon is now providing assistance to Zheng Yi without asking for anything in return. In this Doomsday World, Zheng Yi cannot be so crazy as to use human blood and flesh to raise vampire bats. He has a better alternative, which is a constant supply of zombies. First, we need to build a blood-flesh demon nest and place the blood bat eggs in it for 49 days. Referring to the secret technique, Zheng Yi rearranged his manpower to hunt zombies and plunder their flesh and blood to build this blood-flesh demon nest for hatching the blood bat eggs. Due to the continuous expansion of the gathering place and the acceptance of surrounding personnel, a large number of people, whether they are combat personnel or reserves, have greatly improved their strength. In addition, Zheng Yi needs a large number of zombies and more manpower to hatch blood fetus ghost infants, as well as the upcoming blood flesh gourd and the latest blood bat eggs. Therefore, the expansion speed of the entire gathering place is still rapidly increasing. As a result, the surrounding area of 100 miles or so has almost been swept clean of zombie groups. Just during this period of time, the number of zombies killed by the gathering place is already in the 6 figures. The number of 100,000 zombies may not be much compared to the terrifying number of zombies in the entire world, but it has effectively turned the surrounding area of the gathering place into a large safe zone. It is precisely because of these efforts that the golden seed in Zheng Yi's sea of consciousness seems to have grown a bit. If it was initially the size of a grain of rice, now the golden seed has reached the size of a melon seed. The spreading golden light continuously washes away the bloodthirst and hostility on Zheng Yi's body. The hunting range of the gathering place has once again expanded, and this time they need to go to a farther distance. Zheng Yi personally leads the team, targeting the Chengwei district of Luo City. This used to be the center of the surrounding towns, and the surrounding towns were all under its jurisdiction. It is said that the population here is also in the millions, making it a densely populated urban area. There is a shining river running through the center of the city, divided into the Weinan and Weibei regions, connected by several bridges spanning both banks. However, with the outbreak of the blood moon, the bridges connecting the two banks have been destroyed, so Weinan and Weibei have been isolated into 2 separate areas. This time, Zheng Yi is heading to Weinan. It is rumored that 100,000 zombie army has gathered here, with a terrifying mutant zombie commander whose strength is extremely terrifying, an existence that even the monsters in the surrounding urban areas dare not provoke. It can be said that this number of zombie groups has formed a huge pyramid-shaped structure, with organization and structure. They are no longer ordinary wandering corpses. This will be an obstacle that Zheng Yi's newly established gathering place must overcome for rapid development. Otherwise, the longer it is left unresolved, the greater the threat it will become. After all, Zheng Yi still needed a lot of time to cultivate and couldn't be in this apocalyptic world all the time. More and more survivors gathered in the gathering place, like a tempting cake emitting an enticing aroma, constantly tempting the surrounding zombie horde. In order to ensure the survival of the hard-built gathering place, Zheng Yi had to take the initiative and eliminate this major threat while there was still time. This battle belonged to the mobilization of the gathering place. A large number of tanks, armored vehicles, and ammunition were brought out, and almost all trucks and other transportation vehicles were deployed. At the same time, the gathering place implemented control and curfew to prevent security vulnerabilities, so that the main force would not be attacked while on a distant expedition. Of course, Zheng Yi had his own considerations. While annihilating the zombie horde, he could also plunder a large amount of zombie flesh and crystal cores. The demonic secret techniques collected by his Kijia main lineage for hundreds of years were in need of research, and all aspects required a large amount of flesh support. Whether it was the blood fetus ghost baby still in gestation, or other flesh gourds, or the blood flesh magic nest incubating blood bat eggs, they all consumed flesh. The previous meager harvest was now insignificant under the operation of the huge power machinery. As Zheng Yi's strength increased, the resources consumed in researching demonic secret techniques also increased. Whether it was zombie flesh, zombie crystal cores, or various resentful spirits and fierce ghosts, they were all strategic resources. Regardless of whether they were currently useful or not, the more collected, the safer it would be. This time, Zheng Yi was only interested in this large number of zombie horde. Of course, Zheng Yi would not recklessly go alone to face such a huge horde. If he were alone, he would probably be exhausted and unable to kill all the zombies. Not to mention the subsequent complex and tedious collection and transportation of zombie materials. This was also his purpose in establishing his own power in the apocalyptic world, to have a large army under his command that could save him countless troubles and time. He still needed to work hard and take action personally for now, but Zheng Yi had already planned ahead. The focus would be on improving the strength of his subordinates. By then, with a strong and well-trained army, he would only need to sit in the central command and intervene when necessary. Finally, the army arrived in the Weinan area. Immediately, under Zheng Yi's dispatch, the advance team took the initiative to attack and set up more than a dozen lure formations, skillfully luring the zombies. With unmanned helicopters carrying blood bags filled with blood hovering in the air for a few rounds, the zombies in the city were lured out. Standing high up and looking at the endless tide of zombies surging towards him, Zheng Yi couldn't help but show a hint of seriousness on his face. Tens of thousands of people, boundless. And the number of zombies reached hundreds of thousands, converging from all directions like a tide. As the zombie horde crossed the first warning line, Zheng Yi nodded towards Jin Wuxian below. Begin. With Jin Wuxian's command, various artillery in the army began to bombard, creating huge open spaces in the densely packed zombie horde. The exploding shells immediately swept away the surrounding zombies, but in an instant, they were filled again by the surging zombies. And at this moment, the massive army of zombies swarming at the forefront suddenly fell, and the ground collapsed. In order to save ammunition, the advance team at the first warning line dug a deep pit. The unprepared zombies fell one after another, some breaking their legs, some breaking their spines, and some having their heads directly snapped off by the impact. Before these fallen zombies could react, another batch of zombies fell from above. However, there were still too many zombies in this horde. In an instant, the dug pit was submerged by the tide of zombies. These unconscious walking corpses continued to roar and push forward. Under the command of Jin Wuxian, the army demonstrated its flexibility. The semi-mechanized troops began to retreat, and the vehicle-mounted machine guns and tank cannons roared, shattering rows of zombies. Blood and flesh flew, limbs splattered. Retreat. After killing a few mutated red-eyed zombies, Zheng Yi ordered Jin Wuxian to lead the team in retreat. The artillery that had retreated earlier set up positions again and opened fire, providing cover for the mechanized forces such as tanks and armored vehicles, and also began to retreat. During this process of chasing and retreating, the number of zombies in the horde rapidly decreased. The army at the gathering point suffered no casualties except for the consumption of a certain amount of ammunition and weapons. The battle lasted for a day and a night, and the zombie horde had been reduced to less than 10,000. Zheng Yi did not order a further retreat, but directly led the army to face the zombies head-on. At this point, due to the greatly reduced number of zombies and their dispersion, the damage caused by large-scale artillery was minimized, wasting ammunition and explosives. At this moment, it would depend on the abilities of the supernatural beings and the special forces in close combat. Fight to the end, not one step back. Of course, all of this was under Zheng Yi's control. With him present, even in the face of the worst situation, there was a safety net. Sword energy danced among the horde of zombies. Zheng Yi also discovered that after multiple mutations, these zombies had evolved quite terrifying abilities. Tremendous strength, incredible speed, bone armor, venomous spray, fire breath. These mutated zombies with special abilities became Zheng Yi's primary targets. Even Jin Wuxian, a supernatural being, also took action one after another, fighting against the mutated zombies and stabilizing the defense line. The battle lasted from noon until dusk, and the horde of 100,000 zombies was finally swept away. As the last and most powerful Golden Bone zombie on the battlefield was pierced through the eye by the flying sword controlled by Zheng Yi, penetrating its skull from behind, everything came to an end. The ground was piled with countless zombie corpses, and in the sky, Zheng Yi looked at the bodies that covered the distance and calmly said, "We won. We won. We finally won." In an instant, the team erupted with a deafening roar, as if releasing all the fear that had accumulated within them. Suddenly, the morale of the Gathering Point's army soared. This was an unprecedented victory, a good time to boost the morale of the Gathering Point that had been constantly battered and on the verge of collapse. Zheng Yi naturally did not interfere with the celebration. He directly ordered Jin Wuxian to organize personnel to collect various resources in the city area, with a focus on ammunition and weapons depots of the major armies. Furthermore, the subsequent personnel of the Gathering Point would be organized to transport more zombie flesh from the battlefield and collect zombie crystals. Chapter 71. As time passed day by day, since the last gathering place was destroyed by the zombie horde in the Weinan district, Zheng Yi's reputation has greatly shaken, attracting more small human factions to join. The range and area of the gathering place expanded continuously. Zheng Yi did not personally handle these matters. Jin Wuxian organized personnel to deal with them. At this moment, the gathering place was no longer the dilapidated fortress that Zheng Yi first conquered. It had rapidly grown and become a powerful force that could not be ignored in the entire Luo city. And at this moment, Zheng Yi stood in front of the constructed blood and flesh demon nest, placing hundreds of blood bat eggs found in the spirit pet bags of the middle-aged people from the chief family into it. This blood and flesh demon nest originated from the cultivation secret technique deliberately spread by the Blood Bat Palace. It used flesh and blood as its foundation and, with the help of a simple formation, gave birth to an item that resembled a huge nest. The pile of fresh red flesh was like a blooming flower. However, this cluster of flesh occupied an area of hundreds of square meters, incredibly huge. It was divided into 7 petals, covered with blood vessels and tumors, constantly wriggling, and had a certain kind of life characteristic, appearing extremely evil. Moreover, this blood and flesh demon nest seemed to have a life of its own, constantly swallowing the flesh and blood of zombies that were continuously delivered, absorbing the essence of the flesh and blood, and hatching the blood bat eggs inside. This blood and flesh demon nest belonged to the hatching nest of the blood bats, and the flesh and blood of the zombies inside could nourish the young blood bats. To ensure safety, this blood and flesh demon nest was built at the core of the gathering place. A huge formation was arranged outside, driven by zombie crystal cores, and guarded by heavily armed guards. Its defensive posture was second only to the blood fetus ghost infant and the blood and flesh gourd vine. It was difficult for outsiders to break in. After all, these blood bats were related to his subsequent arrangements. In the entire gathering place, these areas were all core restricted zones and the fundamental reason for Zheng Yi's establishment of the Doomsday Force. Naturally, no mistakes were allowed. Apart from the vehicles and personnel that transported zombie flesh and blood to the blood and flesh demon nest every day, no one else was allowed in. After completing a series of tasks, Zheng Yi finally let go of his worries. Ultimately, all these actions in the Doomsday world were aimed at increasing his strength. After all, he was just an inconspicuous inner disciple of the assimilating soul sect. To survive in the cruel rules of the demon realm, one must have enough trump cards. Moreover, Zheng Yi discovered that after experiencing the destruction of the zombie horde in the Weinan district, the golden seed inside his body had once again grown and reached the size of a peanut. The contamination aura and killing intent that contaminated his body after killing tens of thousands of zombies had all dissipated without a trace in the golden light of the seed. Of course, the most important thing now was to cultivate his own techniques. After annihilating the large number of zombie hordes in the Weinan district, the gathering place had abundant resources, and supplies would continue to be transported for 1 or 2 years, entering a relatively stable period. Zheng Yi took some time to continue improving the power of the soul-capturing banner. During these days, whenever he had time, he would upgrade and reinforce the soul-capturing banner, constantly improving its quality. Many precious resources he had collected were refined into this magic weapon. He attached great importance to this law weapon, his life weapon. Under continuous killing, the blood-clothed ghost and the numerous yin soldiers and fierce ghosts in the soul-capturing banner had greatly improved. The blood-clothed female ghost rushed to the 8th level of qi refining, while at least 1/10 of the remaining yin soldiers and fierce ghosts evolved to the 7th level of qi refining, and the rest reached the 6th level of qi refining. It can be said that with the strength of the ghosts currently suppressed inside the soul-capturing banner, they are capable of dealing with cultivators at the 9th level of qi refining. As long as no one at the foundation building stage appears, it would be impossible for several high-level qi refining cultivators to join forces to kill him. In order to refine the black shot technique, Zheng Yi left the gathering place and went directly to a mountain hollow 300 miles away. What heavy yin energy! Even before stepping into the mountain hollow, Zheng Yi could clearly feel a bone-chilling coldness rushing towards him, as if it had penetrated into his marrow. Looking at the gloomy mountain hollow, his eyes flickered. The heavy yin energy almost condensed into mist, floating and completely enveloping the mountain hollow. According to the information he had obtained before, this place used to be a gathering place that resisted the attacks of zombies due to its steep terrain. But one day, it suddenly turned into a terrifying death-forbidden zone. Everyone in the gathering place died. According to those who had previously explored inside, it was filled with wandering resentful spirits and fierce ghosts, with heavy resentment. Any living creature that entered would be endlessly hunted. However, this is indeed a good place to cultivate the black shot technique. As he spoke, the soul-capturing banner appeared in Zheng Yi's hand. With a slight wave, a gust of yin wind blew, and the blood-clothed female ghost led dozens of yin soldiers and fierce ghosts to appear. Compared to their appearance when they were first captured, the red clothes on the blood-clothed female ghost now seemed bloodstained, emitting a strong yin energy. The seemingly thin red clothes had long evolved into a defensive law weapon, making it difficult for even the 7th level qi refining blood bat to break through. The other yin soldiers and fierce ghosts also underwent significant changes. Under the guidance of the main soul of the soul-capturing banner, they transformed into yin soldiers wearing black armor and wielding spears. Their aura surged, forming a cohesive force that was no less than high-level qi refining ghosts. Screech! With a ghostly roar, the blood-clothed female ghost led the yin soldiers into the dense yin energy first. For living beings, yin energy would harm their bodies and extinguish the 3 yang fires on them. Even if their bodies were strong and healthy, they would still fall seriously ill after leaving. But for ghosts, this kind of place was like a fish in water, a sacred land for cultivating resentful spirits and fierce ghosts. The dense yin energy did not hinder the blood-clothed female ghost's perception at all. A group of yin soldiers quickly moved out, and soon the first fierce ghost was captured and brought in front of Zheng Yi. It was a fierce ghost with a huge head, a rotting body, and an extremely ugly appearance, also known as a big-headed ghost at the 6th level of qi refining. A natural ghost den again. There are many hidden resentful spirits and fierce ghosts here. It should be enough for me to cultivate the black shot technique. Rarely did Zheng Yi find a hidden place in this apocalyptic world. He nodded in satisfaction, sat cross-legged, and directly activated the black shot technique. A cyan ghostly flame emerged from his hands. He reached out and pressed down on the big-headed ghost's head. The deformed and grotesque ghost struggled desperately, but it seemed to be bound by an invisible force. The more powerful cyan ghostly flame burned fiercely, and the eerie ghost energy seemed to be its fuel, completely igniting the cyan flames and turning the entire big-headed ghost into a torch. A pure energy surged into Zheng Yi's body through his arm, while the resentful spirit and fierce ghost used for cultivation completely perished, turning into nothingness. The absorbed pure soul energy quickly circulated along Zheng Yi's extraordinary meridians, continuously converging in his hidden acupoints. With the replenishment of soul essence, the spiritual power formed by the black shot technique rapidly grew stronger. Whether it was an illusion or not, the originally gathered green flames on his body seemed to darken at this moment, flickering with a faint light, gradually emitting a strange corrosive aura. Having finally found a sacred land suitable for cultivating the black shot technique, Zheng Yi naturally didn't want to leave easily. He no longer wandered around, searching for other locations, but instead stayed directly in this eerie and terrifying mountain hollow to begin closed-door cultivation. Relying on the blood-clothed female ghost and his subordinates, the Yin soldiers, Zheng Yi delved deep into this ghost-infested place, capturing vengeful spirits and fierce ghosts to use for cultivation. This went on for a full half-month. In order not to delay his regular cultivation, Zheng Yi's daily expenditure was mostly on spirit stones. In the Doomsday world, there were no spiritual veins, and spiritual energy was extremely scarce. Even if condensed and absorbed through spells, it was only a trace, extremely rare. This place was indeed unsuitable for cultivators. Fortunately, Zheng Yi brought a large number of low-grade spirit stones for his daily cultivation needs. But the results were also very fruitful. During this period, he had successfully refined 330 to 40 vengeful spirits and fierce ghosts. About one-third of the circulating green Zan Sha in his body had naturally transformed into ink spirit devourer. Even the demonic flames condensed from his abundant demonic energy had turned into dark green demonic flames, greatly increasing their power. The corrosive power produced could even directly affect the divine souls and divine thoughts of cultivators, making it a remarkable achievement. Almost all of the vengeful spirits and fierce ghosts in this mountain hollow were gradually consumed by Zheng Yi, feeding his dark green demonic flame and demonic energy, leaving none behind. The originally cold and gloomy ghost cave now had a few traces of yang energy, and sunlight was shining in again, dispelling the chill. Zheng Yi sat cross-legged on the ground, extending his right hand with the palm facing up. The circulation route of the black shot technique within his body quickly ran, and amidst the surging spiritual energy, accompanied by a bang, a violent dark green flame burst forth from his palm. That flame seemed to have no temperature, causing no harm to Zheng Yi's physical body. It even seemed to possess an unusually icy sensation. As the dark green demonic flame burned and flickered in Zheng Yi's palm, the temperature of the surrounding air suddenly dropped by 2 or 3 degrees. A layer of fine frost formed on the ground along his body. With Zheng Yi having refined all the surrounding vengeful spirits and fierce ghosts during this period, the black shot technique once again advanced, gradually transforming from green Zan Sha to ink spirit devourer. However, in order to completely upgrade to ink spirit devourer, Zheng Yi needed to refine 999 vengeful spirits and fierce ghosts or the divine souls of cultivators. If using the souls of living people for cultivation, the quantity would need to be multiplied by 10. Although this demonic technique had immense potential in simple cultivation methods, the resulting karma and sins were not to be taken lightly. It was not something ordinary cultivators could bear, which was why many practitioners would switch to other techniques midway. Very few people could cultivate it to the highest level. If it weren't for Zheng Yi being in the Doomsday world, he probably wouldn't have chosen to cultivate this demonic technique. After all, while strength was important, one's life was also important. He didn't want to be backlashed by karma and die a painful death. The entire ghost cave was cleansed by Zheng Yi, and all the vengeful spirits and fierce ghosts were completely annihilated, becoming the materials for Zheng Yi's cultivation and providing nourishment for the advancement of the black shot technique. Without cultivation resources, he had to stop this closed-door cultivation session. However, the gains were quite fruitful. Mo Ling Sha had transformed 1/3 of its power, greatly increasing its strength. At this time, Zheng Yi's cultivation had also reached the high level of the 5th layer of qi refining. Zheng Yi was ready to continue sweeping the surrounding resented spirits and fierce ghosts. By just devouring a few more demon caves and breaking through another layer of qi refining, it was not impossible. Unfortunately, Zheng Yi had to interrupt his cultivation because the material of the soul-capturing banner could no longer support the ghosts nurtured inside. This was because, along with Zheng Yi's battles, especially in the Doomsday world, the power of devouring the souls of ghosts in large quantities. The main soul of the soul-capturing banner had also reached the mid-level of the blood robe realm, and there were also many at the 7th layer of chi refining. As the soul-capturing banner was Zheng Yi's law weapon during the chi refining period, it had not undergone a second refinement, and the material used could not withstand the impact of the blood robe ghost and the fierce ghost soldier's realm. Cracks had begun to appear on the soul-capturing banner. This was like an air cylinder that could only hold 100 liters of air, but was forced to contain 2,000 liters of air, resulting in the cylinder exploding. The situation with the soul-capturing banner was similar. After hastily ending his cultivation in the Doomsday World, Zheng Yi hurried back to the Dia Immortal Domain and directly summoned Qilin to inquire about upgrading the material of the soul-capturing banner. As a subordinate and the most loyal lackey, Qilin deeply understood that everything he currently possessed came from Zheng Yi, and his future prosperity and wealth depended on Zheng Yi's favor. It could be said that the interests of the two were firmly tied together. Although Qilin's cultivation aptitude was not great, and he was not young anymore, he was the most knowledgeable about human affairs and knew how to get along with people. This was also the reason why Zheng Yi dared to use him with peace of mind. Qilin had long entered a mode where he naturally knew what his superior needed the most and what matters were most urgent. So when Zheng Yi asked, he almost instinctively gave an accurate answer. Aside from the mines, the Qi family also had some shop profits. In addition, under Zheng Yi's leadership, they had divided into more than 10 commercial caravans, increasing the business of fierce ghost soul stones. With the continuous increase in the number of soul stones provided by Zheng Yi, the Qi family's caravans had expanded to farther regions, greatly increasing their ability to acquire wealth. These caravans were not only Zheng Yi's money-making trees but also responsible for providing the information Zheng Yi wanted. The previous underground auction of the Blood Gourd in the Ghost City was obtained through them. The subsequent tasks arranged by Zheng Yi were to collect materials for upgrading the soul-capturing banner at all costs. Money can make the ghost grind. While the caravans expanded in all directions, the caravan managers naturally attached great importance to the tasks arranged by Zheng Yi. They eagerly gathered information and promised to purchase several of the most precious materials at a high price. With unique sources of information and efficient capital operation, in about half a month, several caravans had obtained all the materials needed to upgrade the soul-capturing banner as requested by Zheng Yi. The efficiency was so high that it amazed Zheng Yi. Faced with Zheng Yi's sincere praise, Qilin, who was now nominally the head of the entire Qi family, quickly stated that it was just a habit of a businessman. Being able to solve the worries for his superior was his greatest value. It must be said that Zheng Yi is quite satisfied with the performance of the Qi family patriarch whom he has conveniently supported. At least during his Qi refining period, Zheng Yi can comfortably act as the puppet master behind the scenes, remotely commanding matters that he himself cannot conveniently handle, thus saving a lot of trouble. The entire Qi family is his white glove, extremely useful and very good. This is also one of the reasons why he didn't completely exterminate the Qi family in the beginning, but instead left behind a branch and made use of it. Since the power of soul essence is a valuable currency among demonic cultivators, the profit from soul essence stones is simply too great. Zheng Yi's refining of those ghost creatures in the Doomsday World was already a zero-cost transaction, only consuming some time and energy. Therefore, Qilin established a dedicated refining room for Zheng Yi's use. Inside the refining room, Zheng Yi picked up a piece of silver ore called a yin quang mu that was placed in front of him, and as he looked at the shimmering silver light on it, an involuntary smile appeared on his face. Qilin really knows what he's doing. It seems that the Qi family still has a necessary existence. This, a yin quang mu, is a precious type of ore, and its price is not low, requiring at least tens of thousands of low-grade spirit stones. It is especially rare and difficult for ordinary Qi refining cultivators to obtain. However, this, a yin quang mu, is one of the best materials for refining the soul refining flag. Other Qi refining cultivators from the assimilating soul sect don't have a continuous source of funds like Zheng Yi, so they can only choose some cheaper substitutes. However, the quality naturally decreases after upgrading the soul refining flag. But for Zheng Yi, who now has a bulging wallet, he demands the best for his cultivation path, not to mention that the soul refining flag is his law weapon, which cannot be the slightest bit careless. Therefore, the A Yin Kwang Mu, must be arranged. This is also the reason why Zheng Yi has not refined the soul refining flag again. He is also waiting for the Qi family to collect the best materials for him. In Zheng Yi's thinking, the Qi family is just a tool conveniently established to help him quickly improve his strength. Once he reaches a certain realm, the Qi family will lose its usefulness, and the consequence will only be abandonment. Perhaps Qi Lin is very clear about this point, which is why he closely follows Zheng Yi's footsteps and completes everything assigned by Zheng Yi 100%. For example, in collecting the materials for refining the soul refining flag this time, Zheng Yi casually informed Qi Lin, but unexpectedly, when he returned to the Dia Immortal Domain, Qi Lin had already taken care of everything. For Zheng Yi, this undoubtedly saved a lot of time. So his thoughts have changed again. Perhaps he can increase the Qi family's strength from another perspective, in order to make them more useful to him. Let's refine the soul refining flag first, we can discuss this matter later. In the refining room, Zheng Yi directly operated the circulation route of his spiritual energy from the black demonic art within his body. The spiritual energy surged continuously, releasing a dark green flame. Boom! A ball of dark green demonic fire fell onto the center of the gathering fire array, igniting the cauldron in the refining room as it absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy. Zheng Yi raised his hand, and a black light flashed from within him. A small black flag with unique patterns appeared in his palm, with the vivid image of an evil spirit's head on its surface. If one were to listen closely, they could even sense the endless howling of countless Yin soldiers from the surface of the demonic flag. Zheng Yi took a glance and then directly threw the soul-capturing banner, which had started to crack, into it. Under the burning of the dark green flames, the exquisitely black small banner floated quietly in the center of the cauldron. As the temperature inside the cauldron gradually rose, changes began to occur on the surface of the soul-capturing banner. The entire banner gradually changed color, from its original black surface to a slightly whitened appearance due to the burning. The peculiar patterns on the banner began to fade, and a grim and pale ghost head emerged. The soul-capturing banner rolled in the dark green flames, countless black mists twisted and constantly extended a claw or a grim face. Countless shadows gathered, and occasional ghostly roars could be heard from within. It seemed that they couldn't bear the burning of the dark green flames and couldn't help but let out screams. In fact, refining tools also meant refining ghosts. While forging the law weapon, it was also refining the ghosts nurtured within it, burning away impurities, enhancing their aptitude, and allowing them to reach higher levels. If the Yin soldiers and fierce ghosts couldn't withstand it, they would directly collapse and transform into pure ghost power, which would be devoured by other Yin soldiers and fierce ghosts. The ghosts that could withstand the forging process grew together with the soul-capturing banner. Each time the banner was burned, it would enhance the aptitude and potential of the ghosts. It's ready. As he spoke, Zheng Yi's eyes burst with brilliance, and countless spiritual energy gathered in his pupils, forming the technique of the spirit eye, allowing him to see through the core essence behind the illusions. In his gaze, within the huge cauldron, the rolling soul-capturing banner emitted traces of black gas, which were impurities surging out of the banner. At the same time, Zheng Yi remained calm and composed, as if he had performed this step countless times before. He skillfully placed the prepared materials into the forging cauldron one by one. Each material was refined into various liquids, which were finally gathered into the cauldron, forming a silver pill that rolled back and forth like mercury in the forging cauldron. With the last piece of silver ore mother being thrown in, Zheng Yi increased the output of his spiritual power, stabilizing the temperature of the entire demonic fire, while closely watching the cauldron. After a moment, a violent cracking sound was heard. Under the high temperature burning, the silver ore mother directly split into pieces, and the essence extracted from it was a peculiar silver liquid. This liquid merged with the lead mercury metal formed by the previous materials, instantly boosting the momentum of the soul-capturing banner in the cauldron. Seizing this opportunity, Zheng Yi immediately manipulated the soul-capturing banner, flying up and pointing his finger while chanting incantations. All the liquid materials merged into the soul-capturing banner. At this moment, the originally delicate and small banner completely lost control, violently expanding, instantly swelling to half a meter in length. Then, as the aura continued to rise, the soul-capturing banner suddenly expanded again, reaching a height of about 1 zhang. It quietly floated in the center of the cauldron, and the black surface of the banner was covered with golden silk embroidery, forming peculiar fierce ghost patterns. At the end of the banner's pole was an extremely sharp convex surface, like a blood-stained spear, covered in blood-red color, directly pointing under the ceiling. Fortunately, the cauldron was large enough, and only a corner of the banner was exposed, without bursting. Zheng Yi's expression turned serious, as he knew that this was the most critical moment of the refining process. The black Sha art within his body erupted to its maximum extent, and the dark green flames directly surged, doubling the intensity of the flames in the cauldron. Hoo-hoo! The flickering demonic flames had an extremely high temperature, but this heat was tightly contained within the cauldron. However, what spread outward was an extremely chilling aura. Instead of raising the temperature in the refining room, it became even colder. That icy coldness seemed capable of freezing one's soul, surging up from the depths of one's spirit, enough to make one shiver uncontrollably. The fourth stage of the Black Fiend technique, the Ink Spirit Fiend, had already begun to possess the ability to corrode spirit bodies and even divine souls. Finally, under the burning of the demonic flames in the cauldron, the expanded soul-capturing banner slowly returned to the size of a palm, but it became even more delicate and exquisite. The ghostly pattern on its surface seemed to be embroidered with golden threads, and the flickering demonic flames gradually extinguished. Zheng Yi nodded in satisfaction and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I didn't waste my efforts. He muttered to himself and reached into the cauldron, causing the soul-capturing banner to spin and easily fly into his hand. Holding the small banner in his hand, Zheng Yi carefully observed it, looking at the relief carvings of various ghostly creatures on the banner pole, which were lifelike and made him nod involuntarily. These carvings were not accidental, but came from the numerous ghostly soldiers within the soul-capturing banner, merging with it during the refining process. During battle, they could activate the malevolent aura within the soul-capturing banner, greatly improving its quality and combat power. As for the shadows on the banner surface, besides countless relief carvings of ghostly heads embroidered with golden threads, the central part was blood red, vividly depicting the blood-clothed ghost, occupying the position of the main soul. This time, luck was on my side. Everything went so smoothly. This law weapon of mine has also been upgraded to the level of a high-grade law weapon in one go. The second refinement of the 3 sacrifices and 3 refinements has finally succeeded. It had to be said that the entire refining process for Zheng Yi went smoothly, even more so than any of his previous simulated refining attempts. Not much time was spent, but the effect was very good, leaving Zheng Yi very satisfied. Afterwards, Zheng Yi retracted the soul-capturing banner into his body, left seclusion, found Qi Lin, praised him a few words, and gave him a series of instructions for the future. Zheng Yi returned to the Doomsday World once again. Doomsday World, Luo City. This ruined city shrouded under the eerie blood moon always seemed to be enveloped in a faint mist. These cold auras were most suitable for the appearance of zombies and other ghostly creatures, and Zheng Yi felt that these creatures were mutating and iterating rapidly. Not only were there more types, but their numbers were also increasing rapidly. For a long time, Zheng Yi had been suspecting that the reason this world had become like this was definitely closely related to the strange blood-colored moon that appeared in the sky. Even the appearance of zombies was definitely not as simple as the so-called zombie virus. In this environment, it was not difficult to find a demonic lair or a ghostly creature's nest. Standing at the highest point of the entire area, Zheng Yi was on the rooftop of a commercial building. His gaze was like a torch, and under the gathering of spiritual energy, his naked eyes were even clearer than a high-powered telescope. Using divination, he carefully identified the source of the yin energy. In the end, his gaze stopped at a certain place, and the area he was looking at was a place that resembled a slaughterhouse. This used to be a hospital that served as a regional center. After the blood moon descended, due to the large number of deaths, it has become a terrifying nest where ghosts gather. Unlike other hidden lairs or ghost nests, the ghosts here like to go out, hunting. Once night falls and the sun disappears, when the blood-red moon rises high again and the yin energy is at its strongest, it is the time when numerous ghosts collectively set out. Like a night parade of 100 ghosts, they hunt and kill any living creatures they come across. It is an extremely dangerous area. Zheng Yi had long heard of its reputation and observed it several times, understanding its danger, which is why he had not taken action against it. But now that the soul-capturing banner has successfully upgraded to a high-grade law weapon and the bottleneck in refining the 100 Souls banner has disappeared, he is ready to make a move. Hoo-hoo. In the dark night, a gust of cold wind blows, and the howling chill circulates in the air. Especially around this dilapidated hospital, strands of black chi surge, forming an even colder space. As time passes, some ghosts begin to appear around, but their aura doesn't seem very strong, just some mischievous spirits at best. But when it reaches the second half of the night, suddenly, the black chi thickens instantly, and in a flash, a black mist envelops this area. Screech, screech. From within the black mist occasionally come eerie sounds, mixed with footsteps, the cries of babies, the sound of doors opening, and telephone ringing. All these sounds intertwine, appearing extremely terrifying in this cold and dark environment, easily unsettling one's fragile nerves. Just then, Zheng Yi's ears caught a piercing scream. It was a kind of icy voice filled with death, carrying a mysterious and mind-boggling effect. If it were to enter an ordinary person's ears, even their thoughts would freeze. Within the black mist, shadows come and go, and after a moment, the black mist disperses, revealing another scene before Zheng Yi's eyes. It is a clean corridor, just an ordinary hospital hallway, with doctors in white coats, nurses in uniforms, and mostly patients. Ordinary doctors and patients, nothing out of the ordinary, as long as you don't look at the faces of those patients. But under Zheng Yi's spirit eye technique, this ghostly illusion completely loses its effect. Zheng Yi can clearly see that none of these people are solid, they are all illusory existences, which means they are all vengeful spirits and ghosts. Especially those patients, each phantom with a twisted and grimacing face, as if they had endured unimaginable pain before death, which is why they have gathered such profound resentment. This resentment is their last breath in this world. As long as the resentment remains, these vengeful spirits and ghosts must kill to alleviate and release the tormenting resentment. Led by several doctor ghosts, a group of ghosts begins to move. Their bodies float in midair, pale faces with vacant expressions, but their eyes filled with resentment. They spread out in all directions along the wide street. I've waited so long, and you think you can just leave? Better come willingly into my soul-capturing banner, the duck that's in my mouth can't escape. Boom. Zheng Yi releases and converges his entire aura, the spiritual luck within him turns. Blood surges, in an instant, a burst of hot blood energy surges forth, like turning on a bright incandescent lamp in the dark night, dazzling to the eyes. Squeak, squeak. In an instant, the dead and cold silence was shattered. Zheng Yi, like a giant torch, emitted a surging aura of a living person in the midst of this night of 100 ghosts, dazzlingly bright and driving the previously calm and sluggish vengeful spirits and ghosts into madness. Crazy and greedy ghost howls resounded from all directions. The scattered ghosts quickly converged from all sides and pounced towards Zheng Yi. For these ghosts, the vitality in a living person's body was not just a guiding light, but the most tempting and deadly lure. As a cultivator, Zheng Yi possessed an even more fragrant and delicious vitality, causing these evil spirits to lose control. Come, all of you, come. Facing the crowded street full of evil spirits, Zheng Yi showed no intention of retreat. On the contrary, his eyes were filled with a smile as he waved the soul-capturing banner in his hand. Immediately, the enormous demonic banner unfurled in the wind, rapidly expanding. In the blink of an eye, it swelled to over 10 feet tall, emitting a chilling black aura. In a trance, it seemed as if a passage had been opened between the realm of illusion and reality. The blood-clothed female ghost was the first to emerge from it, flying directly into the air. The other 48 fierce ghost soldiers were all elite warriors, forming a tight encirclement to protect Zheng Yi in the center. The black banner fluttered, and Zheng Yi's spiritual power surged. The overwhelming ink spirit evil covered his body and, following the connection between him and the soul-capturing banner, spread over the surface of the banner, forming an invisible aura shield. This ghost hospital was the strongest ghost den Zheng Yi had encountered in the apocalypse world, far surpassing the previous places. The quality of the evil spirits was exceptionally high. Each of the swarming evil spirits was stronger than the last, with heavier resentment. Compared to the demonic dens Zheng Yi had previously exterminated, they were on a whole different level. Even the few evil doctor and nurse ghosts alone possessed the strength of the 7th level of chi refining. This was the reason Zheng Yi had always known about this place but had never ventured deep into it, only observing from a distance. Before his strength reached a certain level, Zheng Yi tried to avoid conflicts with them as much as possible. Otherwise, if he were to encounter trouble in this apocalypse world, that would be truly laughable. All vengeful spirits and ghosts had no physical bodies and existed in the form of spirit bodies. Ordinary people could only see their condensed resentment, but true cultivators could still perceive the illusory abnormalities. Therefore, compared to zombies, the speed of fierce ghosts was as fast as lightning. Attracted by Zheng Yi's blood essence, they arrived in the blink of an eye. When they collided, the first to face the attack was the blood-clothed female ghost, the main soul of the soul-capturing banner. This blood fiend-level fierce ghost gradually showed signs of advancing to become a ghost king. If it weren't for Zheng Yi's constant suppression, it would have likely rebelled long ago and even devoured all the ghosts within the soul-capturing banner. Now that it had been released by Zheng Yi and knew that the master of the soul-capturing banner would not stop it, it became exceptionally excited, emitting a piercing ghost howl and violently expanding its body. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a giant evil ghost with a green face and fierce fangs, standing 3 jong tall. This was its true form. The appearance of the blood-clothed female ghost was just an image left behind from its past life. The green-faced and fierce evil ghost lord extended a massive palm, with rough, purplish skin and large knuckles. Each finger was like a sharp blade, ruthlessly grabbing towards the doctor ghost in front. The doctor ghosts in the ghost hospital were all seasoned warriors. Although they were caught by the giant palm, they still struggled desperately. Their necks instantly elongated like snakes, their mouths splitting to their earlobes, revealing a mouthful of sharp fangs as they fiercely bit towards the green-faced and fierce evil ghost lord's neck. As the main soul of the soul-capturing banner, the green-faced and fierce evil ghost lord had greatly benefited from Zheng Yi's 2 refinements of the banner. Its strength had now skyrocketed, and it emitted a strange laughter from its mouth. Facing the approaching bite of the evil doctor ghost, it didn't dodge or avoid at all. Instead, it grabbed the ghost and forcefully stuffed it into its own mouth. At the same time, the sharp fangs of that ghost doctor were biting into the neck of the green-faced evil ghost. A sour sound was heard, and the skin was only penetrated half an inch before being blocked. But for the main soul of the green-faced fang evil ghost, this level of injury was almost like scratching an itch. He bit off half of the evil ghost doctor's body in one bite, and fresh red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Amidst the eerie ghostly aura, he used the method of devouring spirits to swallow the evil ghost, causing his own aura to skyrocket. Zheng Yi watched from a distance, his brows furrowing involuntarily. This main soul truly lived up to its bloodthirsty level quality, extremely fierce and difficult to control. If it weren't for his own exceptional abilities, he might have ended up devouring all the fierce ghosts within the soul-capturing banner. In that case, the soul-capturing banner would have been directly torn apart, which would definitely not be worth it. Accompanied by the transformation of the blood-clad ghost into its true form, the embryonic form of the green-faced Fang Ghost King, it led the army of fierce ghosts and hospital ghosts in a collision. Gusts of gloomy wind swept through, and the mournful cries of ghosts echoed throughout the land. The demonic sound of the soul-capturing magic resonated in the surroundings, causing this space to be thrown into chaos by the mixture of yin and murderous aura. The collision between the ghosts was a real physical fight, entirely dependent on whose soul power was stronger and who had better supplies. In these aspects, the army of fierce ghosts within the soul-capturing banner completely overwhelmed the hospital ghosts. The battle continued until dawn. Before the sun completely rose, the army led by the green-faced Fang Evil Ghost within the soul-capturing banner completely wiped out all the hospital ghosts. Nearly 500 to 600 ghosts inside were completely eradicated. This harvest is not small. Looking at the green-faced Fang Evil Ghost, whose size had returned to normal, as well as the numerous fierce ghost soldiers who had fought alongside him, Zheng Yi couldn't help but nod. Ghosts and cultivators were different. Devouring each other's ghost aura was their instinct and the fastest way to advance. The more ghosts the blood-clad ghost killed, the more soul power it absorbed, and the faster it would improve. At this moment, this terrifying bloodthirsty quality ghost had broken through the 8th layer of qi refining, surpassing Zheng Yi's own cultivation level. However, constrained by the intimidation of the soul-capturing banner's main soul, it was still a plaything in Zheng Yi's hands and couldn't escape his control. As for the other fierce ghost soldiers, more than half of them had also broken through the 7th layer of qi refining, surpassing Zheng Yi's cultivation level. Cultivating as a cultivator was different from fighting as a fierce ghost. Mutual devouring was necessary for them, but it had to be done step by step in order to stabilize their cultivation. Even if a demonic cultivator was fierce and made rapid progress in their cultivation technique, it was impossible for them to advance a small stage in just a few days, as many people imagined. That kind of thing only existed in legends and was the delusion of the ignorant. After all, cultivation emphasized essence, energy, and spirit. Only by refining the three treasures to the extreme, causing a fission and forming an evolutionary trend, could one undergo a rebirth and advance further. In addition to cultivation level, aptitude, and innate talent, one also needed to have a Tao heart and comprehension that matched their own cultivation level. It was definitely not as easy as many people imagined, where having enough resources for cultivation and devouring a cultivator's soul would allow them to easily advance. If that were the case, then the top demonic sects wouldn't need to consider cultivation aptitude anymore. They would only need to provide enough resources for rapid progress. How could that be possible? Heaven and earth, everything has its own destiny. Unless one completely disregarded their foundation and didn't consider their future path, simply growing recklessly and dying in a moment of pleasure. Cultivators cultivate against the heavens, seizing the source of all things in heaven and earth for their own benefit. But it also depends on the capacity of one's own bowl, how much water it can hold. Zheng Yi's progress at the moment is extremely rare among other demonic cultivators, as he has made a leap from the 3rd level of qi refining to the brink of breaking through to the 6th level of qi refining in just over half a year. However, under the suppression of the golden seed in his sea of consciousness, Zheng Yi's foundation is stable, even surpassing those disciples of the righteous Tao sect known for their solid foundations. Although the bloodthirsty soul-devouring banner in his body is fierce, the yin soldiers and ghost soldiers inside are obedient and dare not resist. Zheng Yi even has a feeling that there are no hidden dangers in his body now, his foundation is solid and firm, and he could break through at any time and anywhere. Buzz. Suddenly, a vibration came from within Zheng Yi's body. His expression changed, and he directly waved the soul-devouring banner to collect the blood-clothed ghost and the ghost soldiers. With a movement of his body, Zheng Yi didn't move far. His figure appeared in a hidden room of a quick hotel. As soon as he sat down, a thick layer of green qi enveloped Zheng Yi's face, and the green profound fiend inside his body began to surge. More than 2/3 of the fiendish qi turned into ink spirit fiend. It was no longer simply green and black, but completely transformed into black, with only a slight hint of mottling, making it not so pure. After devouring the soul power of the ghosts in the hospital, the fiendish qi inside Zheng Yi's body further evolved into a more powerful and terrifying form of ink fiend. However, at this moment, his attention was completely focused on the situation inside his body, and he had no mood to understand other things. But he heard a crack sound from inside his body, as if something had broken, and the shackles were suddenly broken. His aura soared, and he directly broke through to the 6th level of qi refining. Zheng Yi didn't expect the breakthrough to come so suddenly and swiftly, as simple as eating and drinking. This was mainly due to his daily accumulation being extremely solid. He had consumed a large amount of resources stored in his body, so when the breakthrough came, it was not as difficult as others. It was like an unstoppable force, a natural progression. Zheng Yi reached out and took out a dozen low-grade spirit stones from his storage bag, sat cross-legged on the bed, closed his eyes, and began to meditate. While he was in a state of cultivation, the soul-devouring banner undulated around him, and the dense black mist almost obscured his figure, providing defense and protecting his safety. If any stranger were to enter this room at this moment, whether they had malicious intent or not, they would first face the attack of countless yin soldiers and ghost soldiers, followed by the huge ghost claws of the soul-devouring banner's main soul, the fierce ghost with a green face and fierce teeth, tearing them apart. After about the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, the last 2 pieces of low-grade spirit stones in Zheng Yi's palm shattered into a ball, and the spiritual energy inside was completely consumed. Zheng Yi slowly opened his eyes, exhaled a breath of turbid air, and his realm was completely stabilized. Having consumed more than 10 spirit stones and stabilized his own fluctuations in spiritual power, Zheng Yi felt refreshed. He had finally broken through to the 6th level of qi refining. Unfortunately, the spiritual energy in the post-apocalyptic world is thin and can't compare to the great Yi immortal domain. Now he can only rely on low-grade spirit stones to supplement it. If he wants to completely stabilize his realm, it would be better to return to the Great Yi Immortal Domain. This can be considered an unexpected gain. Zheng Yi didn't expect that during the process of transforming the Ink Spirit Fiend technique, his own cultivation had also reached a certain bottleneck, leading to this breakthrough at a critical moment. It can be seen that during this period of time, he has laid a very solid foundation. This time, he achieved multiple gains with one action, from refining the soul-devouring banner, to enhancing the fiendish chi of the technique, and finally advancing his realm. It was like hitting 3 birds with 1 stone. Putting aside the matters of the post-apocalyptic world for now, Zheng Yi couldn't wait to return to the Great Yi Immortal Domain. He still needs some time to thoroughly consolidate his cultivation level. Time passed quickly, and more than a month had passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, Zheng Yi completely stabilized at the 6th level of Qi refining. As long as he advances further, he will reach the advanced level of Qi refining, which is the realm that Zheng Yi, who was once an independent cultivator in Zonkong City, has longed for. But now, everything is within his reach. This is no longer his current goal. At the same time, in the post-apocalyptic world, there were changes in the flesh nest built in the central area of the gathering place. The blood bat eggs inside had also started to hatch. Perhaps it was because the zombie flesh was inherently different from ordinary human flesh, or perhaps due to a continuous supply of flesh and blood, the hatching time of the blood bats had been shortened by 1/5. In less than 40 days, the first batch of blood bat eggs had already hatched. This also indicated that the rules of the 2 worlds were different, and the hatching time might vary. As the creator, Zheng Yi stood high up, observing the changes in the flesh nest. In the flesh nest, which bloomed like flowers, blood bats the size of chicks struggled to break free from the blood eggs. Their bodies were covered in blood-colored skin, with fur on their chests and backs. Their disproportionately large bat wings trembled as they clumsily climbed and crawled within the flesh nest. Zheng Yi furrowed his brows slightly. He discovered that the situation was completely different from what was recorded in the blood bat breeding secret technique he had obtained. Perhaps it was because of the zombie flesh, these hatched blood bat nestlings had a strong desire to devour flesh. Just after hatching, the blood bats, which were only the size of fists, displayed extremely aggressive behavior, biting and tearing at each other. Zheng Yi witnessed a blood bat nestling the size of a chick directly biting and killing another one almost the same size, then devouring it alive. These batlings hatched from zombie flesh seemed to naturally possess a special ability to turn flesh into the most essential blood. Their stomachs seemed like bottomless pits, directly swallowing an amount equivalent to their own size. After devouring their companions, the body of one blood bat nestling grew rapidly like a balloon. In the blink of an eye, it became the size of a bowl, and then it launched an attack on the other remaining companions. This cruel killing and devouring resulted in a significant reduction in the number of blood bat nestlings from the first batch, but Zheng Yi coldly observed. He wanted to see what differences there were in blood bats bred from zombie flesh. The mutual killing and devouring continued until only one female bat and several bat kings remained in the nest. In the blink of an eye, out of the hundreds of hatched blood bat nestlings, only 3 to 5 remained. This result left even the observer Zheng Yi somewhat stunned. Could it be that the blood bats from the Immortal Domain have undergone mutation due to being hatched from zombie flesh? In fact, Zheng Yi had followed the steps in the hatching technique without any mention of the blood bats devouring each other. Perhaps something unexpected had happened with this batch of blood bats. Right. Could it be that these blood bat nestlings have inherited the zombie bloodline? The entire process replayed in Zheng Yi's mind, and he quickly thought of a possibility. The flesh nest was made using a large amount of zombie flesh, which was completely different from the flesh used in the Immortal Domain. Perhaps during the hatching process, the zombie blood in the blood bats was infected, leading to this situation. The blood bat's bloodline is contaminated with zombie blood, causing them to partially transform into zombies and attack and devour each other. This might be the most accurate answer. These blood bat hatchlings have also inherited the rapid growth characteristic of zombies. They can grow by devouring flesh. I'm curious to see what will happen next. Zheng Yi became interested and wanted to continue his scientific research. It's worth noting that the cultivation secret of the blood bat palace in the immortal domain has caused several waves of excitement. The appearance of blood bats has always been about quantity, overwhelming the enemy with a vast number and achieving the final victory. But this time, there seems to be a change during the hatching process. It's like raising GU, where a batch of over 100 blood bat hatchlings devour each other, leaving only 3 to 5 blood bats in the end. Zheng Yi was also curious about what they would eventually become. By the way, after the blood bats hatch, they need to devour spirit stones to enhance their bloodline strength. This is recorded in the secret technique. Zheng Yi hesitated. To be honest, he didn't want to use spirit stones to cultivate blood bats. It's not because he's attached to the spirit stones in his hand. He has his own caravan outside, and it's not a problem to maintain the resources for his chi refining cultivation while raising these blood bats. But if he does that, he will completely fall into the trap set by the blood bat palace. After all, the entire demon realm knows that no matter how well the blood bats are cultivated, they are just pawns for others. As long as the blood bat ancestor at the core formation stage in the hands of the blood bat palace's old demon is still alive, the blood bats in other people's hands are just feed. Since Zheng Yi wants to cultivate blood bats in the doomsday world, using zombie flesh to hatch blood bat hatchlings and giving them zombie bloodlines, it would be best to use items from the doomsday world for cultivation to achieve the best results. Since these blood bats have inherited the zombie gene bloodline, can they also devour zombie cores? Thinking this, Zheng Yi threw several low-grade cores into the flesh nest, only to see the mother bat directly bite and consume them. Its sharp fangs pierced through, and the energy inside quickly flowed into the mother bat's body. The other bat kings did the same, rapidly absorbing the energy inside the zombie cores and visibly enhancing their bodies. They can actually devour zombie cores. Zheng Yi was surprised. He casually threw several low-grade spirit stones into the nest and found that these blood bats had no interest in the spirit stones from the Daya immortal domain and discarded them like old shoes. Understanding this, Zheng Yi didn't hesitate and directly threw a large number of low-grade zombie cores into the nest. Days passed. Every day, Zheng Yi would set aside some time to go to the flesh nest and observe the changes happening inside. With the catalysis of the zombie cores, both the mother bat and the bat kings grew rapidly. Their bodies rapidly expanded and, under the continuous feeding of zombie flesh, they quickly grew to over 2 meters tall, taller than an adult man. Although they still couldn't compare to the 7th level chi refining mutated blood bat king they faced before, it's important to note that these little creatures had only hatched for less than a month. After studying the secret technique of cultivating blood bats, Zheng Yi discovered that it would require a significant amount of time, resources, and spirit stones to cultivate this type of mutated blood bat. After several rounds of selection, they were finally able to give birth to a mutated blood bat with a powerful bloodline and enlarged size. However, it was surprising that several mutated blood bats were born just from the first hatching. Could this be the result of the zombie gene bloodline? Zheng Yi didn't think there was anything special about the blood bat eggs he obtained initially. They were just ordinary blood bat eggs, and the main reason must lie in the zombie flesh and zombie crystal. This series of changes and mutations made Zheng Yi more interested in the mother bat and the bat king, which required more time to cultivate. Soon, in the 2nd month, the mother bat and the bat king matured, and the mother bat began to mate with the bat king. Just when Zheng Yi was expecting a new batch of mutated blood bats to appear, he discovered a strange phenomenon. After completing the mating, Zheng Yi was astonished to find that the mother bat directly ate the bat king involved in the mating as a meal. This mating behavior reminded Zheng Yi of the well-known praying mantis, where the female mantis also eats the male mantis to obtain more nutrients during mating. Although shocked by this behavior, Zheng Yi did not stop it but continued to observe for research purposes. Subsequently, all the remaining bat kings were eaten by the mother bat after mating. In the following days, Zheng Yi saw the mother bat's belly getting bigger and bigger, requiring a higher quantity and freshness of zombie flesh. Until her belly swelled up, Zheng Yi could clearly sense through his divine sense that blood bat eggs were forming in the mother bat's belly. Obviously, the mother bat had become pregnant and entered the next stage of delivery. On the 3rd day, Zheng Yi noticed that something seemed off with the mother bat's belly. The previously vibrant blood bat eggs seemed to have undergone significant changes, with only one remaining out of the originally densely packed signs of life. Confused, Zheng Yi directly used his divine sense to investigate the mother bat's belly. To his surprise, just as he had sensed before, all the blood bat eggs in the mother bat's belly had lost their vitality and had their nutrients continuously absorbed. And the culprit was the last remaining blood bat egg. What's going on? Zheng Yi took a sharp breath, his eyes flickering with a brilliant light. Why did it develop so quickly? Did it eat all its other siblings? This is going to give birth to a demon fetus. Even Zheng Yi felt extremely astonished. He didn't expect that all the offspring in the litter would die, and a demon fetus that devoured all its siblings would appear. This was a young creature with extremely strong attacking power, possibly inheriting the zombie gene bloodline and the instinct of cannibalism from its parents. It directly eliminated all its peers in its belly, surpassing its predecessors and flourishing. All the nutrients from the mother's body were completely devoted to this demon fetus. Through the perception of his divine sense, Zheng Yi could clearly feel that the demon fetus's demands were increasing. The mother bat's appetite noticeably increased, requiring a much larger amount of zombie flesh and zombie crystals, even more than 3 times the previous amount. Zheng Yi was not stingy and provided as much as needed, whether it was zombie flesh or zombie crystals, until the mother bat stopped eating. He wanted to see what kind of demon fetus would hatch from this. The belly of the mother bat swelled, and the demon fetus inside it transformed into a cocoon, hidden within the mother bat's belly, greedily absorbing the nutrients from its host. Squeak! The only mother bat in the flesh nest opened its mouth, revealing sharp fangs, and let out a terrified cry. Because of the growing demon fetus inside its body, the once enlarged belly due to pregnancy now appeared shriveled like wrinkled tree bark, its body extremely emaciated. Its large pupils protruded outward, and its cries were extremely weak. If one were to look beyond the surface at this moment, they would discover a blood-red bat egg inside the mother bat's belly, greedily absorbing the nutrients from its body. In fact, it was no longer just absorption. It was devouring. This blood bat demon fetus was crazily devouring the life of its host. As witnessed, this blood-red egg had been restless since birth. It had absorbed all its siblings' bat eggs that were laid together, and now it had set its sights on the mother's body, plundering its flesh, blood, and life force. This mutated bat egg is truly ferocious. A natural demon fetus, as expected. Zheng Yi had been observing the changes in this nest of bat eggs and never expected to cultivate such a monstrous creature. Even in the hatching stage, it had directly absorbed all its siblings' bat eggs and was now greedily devouring the mother's flesh. It couldn't be described simply as ferocious, but rather possessed a deep demonic nature. It was a born calamity. There was no doubt that after experiencing the hatching of a generation of mutated blood bats, this second-generation blood bat, which had mutated after absorbing zombie genes, had undergone a tremendous change in its genetic makeup and bloodline. Although it still retained some of the appearance of a blood bat, it probably had little resemblance to the ancestor of the blood bat in the immortal domain of Duya. Even if it hatched and was brought back to the immortal domain of Duya by Zheng Yi, he had no worries or fears that it would once again be controlled by the blood bat ancestor, thus turning against him. Squeak! The mother bat's cries gradually weakened until it finally died. Zheng Yi had long anticipated that this would happen but did not take any measures. He simply watched coldly. To him, these bat eggs, after being cultivated, were nothing more than his tools. An ordinary blood bat mother, of course, had no use for a born calamity like a natural demon fetus. Although this demon fetus was fierce and posed a risk of devouring its master in the future, it also meant that its research value was extremely high, with immense worth. With the death of the mother bat, the once plump flesh became shriveled. In an instant, all the nutrients and vitality were sucked dry, leaving behind a dry and thin piece of skin. It was hard and devoid of any moisture. Even a mummy weathered by 100 years in the desert would probably be more plump than this. Thump, thump. The plundering of killing the mother bat to obtain its eggs allowed the demon fetus to successfully hatch. The shriveled belly of the mother bat swelled high, and the blood-colored bat egg inside suddenly wriggled and struggled, forcefully tearing through the mother's withered skin and emerging from within. This ferocious creature seems to absorb nutrients at an incredibly fast rate, greatly accelerating its growth. As a result, it preys on the flesh and blood energy of the mother to replenish its own needs for hatching. This can be considered a predatory instinct. Zheng Yi looked at the torn belly of the mother in the flesh nest, from which struggled and rolled out a blood-colored bat egg, his face showing a thoughtful expression. But it was not to defend this mutated blood egg, but to figure out what this extremely special blood egg had experienced since its birth. This is a necessary process for raising pets. Only by feeding them properly can we understand their habits and lay the foundation for mass cultivation. However, the blood-colored bat egg cultivated this time is extraordinary. It can be said to be hostile to its parents and siblings, almost sucking dry all the same kind it comes into contact with. It can be considered extremely ferocious. This blood-colored bat egg can be called a natural monster. Tearing open the mother bat's belly, the demon fetus that crawled out quickly rolled to a suitable position in the flesh nest and began to rapidly absorb the essence of flesh and blood contained in the nest. Almost all of the many zombie flesh and blood put in to cultivate the demon bat were absorbed by this demon fetus. But it still wasn't satisfied, and Jung-Yi couldn't understand where all the zombie flesh and blood essence it absorbed had gone. Although it was just an egg now, Jung-Yi could clearly sense the hunger transmitted from within the egg. In this way, Jung-Yi's expression changed uncertainly. He didn't know what he had cultivated. The secret method of cultivating blood bats in the demon realm can only be considered a small evil technique, and only the blood bat demon technique and the blood bat old demon have the core inheritance. But this originally ordinary blood bat egg from the Great Yi immortal domain seemed to undergo some incredible changes after being brought to the Doomsday world and combined with zombie flesh and blood. With the combination of zombie genes, can this thing still become a blood bat? Of course, although he had concerns, it didn't mean Jung-Yi gave up on continuing the cultivation. On the contrary, he became even more interested in this blood bat demon fetus. He just needed to continue to put in zombie flesh and blood to nourish the demon fetus. He wanted to see what kind of thing he could cultivate. Perhaps it would bring him a great surprise. Anyway, it's not like he's using the flesh and blood of living people for sacrifice. There's as much zombie flesh and blood as he needs. While Jung-Yi was considering this, before he could take any action, the hunger transmitted by the bat egg demon fetus on the opposite side became stronger and stronger. Whoosh! Finally, when the hunger within the demon fetus reached its peak, it went into a frenzy and suddenly jumped out of the flesh nest, directly pouncing towards Jung-Yi's face. There was only Jung-Yi, a living person, in the entire hatching room, and as a cultivator who absorbed spiritual energy to nourish his body, his flesh and blood here were like Tang Monk's flesh, which was truly tempting to the bat egg demon fetus. However, Jung-Yi had always emitted a dangerous aura that was not to be trifled with, so the demon fetus didn't dare to act. Now it was almost driven mad by hunger, its consciousness filled with chaotic and unclear emotions. This ghostly thing let out a sharp scream and couldn't hold back any longer, fiercely pouncing towards Jung-Yi like a face-hugging bug. "You're quite bold." Jung-Yi's face darkened, his eyes widened, emitting a cold gleam. With a wave of his hand, dark green flames surged in his palm and directly slapped towards the demon fetus. The blood egg has not hatched yet, but the organism within it already possesses a certain resistance. When Jung-Yi slapped it, he forcefully sent it back into the flesh nest without causing any harm. Of course, this was also due to Jung-Yi's mercy. However, the demonic flames he displayed were ruthless. The ink spirit shatter was already considered a very sinister aura, and the newly condensed demonic fire could even damage the soul and erase spirituality. It was a power that directly harmed the soul, specifically targeting creatures like this demon. Jung-Yi's palm wind swept the demon fetus back into the nest, and the dark green flames spread, covering the entire demon fetus blood egg. Sizzle! The sound of burning echoed in the air, constantly emitting a faint burnt smell. Although this demon fetus possessed a terrifying ability to absorb flesh and blood, and its strength was not insignificant, it was ultimately just an unborn demon fetus. Under Jung-Yi's display, it had no way to resist the scorching of the ink spirit shatter demonic flames. These sinister flames could directly burn the soul of the demon fetus. Although Jung-Yi had painstakingly cultivated this demon fetus, its blatant acts of rebellion, daring to attack him directly, were truly lawless. It must be properly punished. After all, if such a ferocious creature was left unchecked from the beginning, it might eventually turn against its master. This kind of situation had occurred countless times among demonic cultivators, and Jung-Yi took it seriously and learned from it. This ghostly thing seems to have completely transformed. Its potential is not low, actually able to withstand the burning of the ink spirit shatter demonic fire. Watching the changes in the demon fetus, Jung-Yi's eyes lit up, unable to help but exclaim in surprise. He saw the demon fetus blood egg screaming in pain from being burned, begging for mercy through its thoughts, and frantically rolling back and forth in the flesh and blood demon nest, struggling madly. Soon, Zheng Yi was astonished to find that a strong blood-like gas surged out of the surface of the demon fetus, colliding directly with the dark green flames, burning into strands of blood-red smoke. The black aura flame swirling around it also turned into nothingness. This time, Zheng Yi was truly surprised. He felt that he might have underestimated this demon fetus. At the beginning, he had never expected that this demon fetus could use its own abilities to extinguish the ink spirit shatter's condensed flames even before hatching. Although Zheng Yi only casually displayed a small amount of demonic fire, and the ink spirit shatter demonic fire had not fully matured, the fact that this blood egg possessed such an ability still exceeded his initial expectations. It must be understood that the power of the ink spirit shatter, born from the fourth stage of the cultivation of the black shatter technique, was already formidable. Even a chi refining cultivator at the 9th level, if contaminated by the ink spirit shatter, would have their soul burned and would probably find it difficult to escape for a while, feeling as if they were better off dead. This was the power of the sinister aura. However, when used on this unborn demon fetus blood egg, it unexpectedly did not achieve its full effect and was instead broken. He speculated that the blood energy that had just emerged from the blood egg should be a kind of original energy born after the demon fetus integrated the zombie gene bloodline. It's just that this energy seemed to be of a high grade, and combined with his mercy, it extinguished the ink spirit shatter. A small punishment, and you dare to resist. I can see that you're really getting impatient with your life. Zheng Yi opened his eyes and looked at the blood embryo demon fetus. He could feel the fetus trembling, its consciousness vaguely taking shape, showing a mixture of fear and dread towards him. It's hard to imagine that this is the same ferocious demon fetus that was trying to devour Zheng Yi just now. Zheng Yi wouldn't indulge it. The nature of demons is deeply ingrained, just like the fierce ghosts refined by the soul-capturing banner. Without moral constraints, if they aren't made to fear, they will only harm him. He coldly watched the blood embryo demon fetus and swung the soul-capturing banner in his hand. From within the black mist, the main soul of the soul-capturing banner, the blood-clothed ghost, flew out. Zheng Yi had an expressionless face as he pointed at the demon fetus and said, "Teach it a lesson, use all means necessary." This time, Zheng Yi was prepared to be ruthless with the demon fetus. Such deeply rooted life forms of evil couldn't be swayed by kindness alone. They had to be made to fear to their very core. So Zheng Yi didn't hold back and directly sent out the blood-clothed ghost at the 8th level of chi refining. The blood-clothed ghost nodded slightly, receiving Zheng Yi's command. After continuous evolution within the soul-capturing banner, the main soul of the banner became increasingly wise and could even directly understand the tasks assigned by Zheng Yi. Moreover, due to the repairs made earlier, Zheng Yi had confirmed the absolute authority of the soul-capturing banner's master, gaining deeper control over the fierce ghosts and yin soldiers within it. With a single thought, he could destroy the ghost bodies that these creatures had painstakingly condensed and make them suffer a fate worse than death. On the other hand, the golden seed born in Zheng Yi's sea of consciousness had a terrifying suppression effect on the soul-capturing banner. The combination of the two completely established his authority. Who was the master of the banner? Who were the ghost slaves? It was clear at a glance. Therefore, even after reaching the 8th level of chi refining, the blood-clothed ghost didn't dare to provoke in any way. Instead, it became even more obedient, meticulously completing various tasks assigned by Zheng Yi. It was afraid that if Zheng Yi became unhappy one day, with a single thought, it would be reduced to ashes and devoured by other ghosts. At that time, it would truly be scattered and destroyed. The blood-clothed ghost was extremely fearful of Zheng Yi, but as a collection of grudges, it showed no mercy towards others. On the contrary, it became even more ferocious and cruel. Letting out a sharp strange howl, whenever it tortured these weak creatures, the blood-clothed ghost could feel a genuine sense of pleasure. It enjoyed this feeling. Its figure swayed, and the blood-clothed ghost had already transformed into a hideous face with green skin, turning into a residual image as it pounced directly towards the flesh nest. Its 10 fingers turned into crimson claws, bringing forth a sharp sound of wind as it grabbed towards the blood embryo. It didn't know what exactly this demon fetus was, but since Zheng Yi, the master of the soul-capturing banner, had given the order, it would directly execute it. It immediately launched a fierce attack. Zheng Yi furrowed his brows slightly but didn't say anything. It wasn't that he was afraid the blood-clothed ghost would completely tear apart the demon fetus. After all, this thing could withstand even the ink spirit's attacks. Although it hadn't hatched yet, it wasn't as fragile as imagined. Sizzle. Like the sound of a blade cutting through iron, the sharp claws fiercely scratched the surface of the demon fetus. The flesh and blood shell of the fetus, which didn't appear to be particularly hard, was unexpectedly tough, like cowhide that had been kneaded countless times, seemingly harder than steel. Even the blood-clothed ghost, who had reached the 8th level of chi refining and greatly increased in strength after transforming into a hideous ghost, had astonishing attack power. Yet, its claws only slightly scratched the surface of the blood embryo, being stopped by the even tougher flesh and blood, unable to penetrate deeper. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.